The story begins with an event that took place several months ago. A girl was live streaming herself while baking sweetbread. She told her viewers that the smell was amazing, and the chat was filled with excited comments. She showed the camera how soft and bouncy the bread looked before ending the stream, leaving her audience eager for the next recipe. Satisfied with how it turned out, she called the session a success. Just then, her friend entered the room and asked if she was ready to leave. She reminded her that they had an appointment and that they were running late. The main character quickly changed into her outdoor clothes, apologizing for forgetting and asking if her friend planned to turn the guy down. Her friend reassured her that it would be fine. The boy was from their school, and she just needed to reject him politely to avoid any awkwardness. She even joked that he might turn out to be the perfect guy. Chohui, her friend, was used to getting a lot of confessions. She was beautiful, and people usually acted nice at first, but some didn't take rejection well. That was why the main character decided to come along, to act as her bodyguard. Ajin, the protagonist, waited nearby at a park and texted Chohui to let her know she was watching from a distance. She told her to call if anything seemed wrong. Although Ajin felt slightly reassured that the boy was a fellow student, she stayed alert. Chohui texted back, thanking Ajin and promising to finish the meeting quickly. Ajin simply replied, wishing her good luck. While waiting outside, Ajin noticed the weather had turned very cold. She looked through her bag for a hand warmer when a stranger suddenly spoke to her. A tall man had approached and asked if he could get directions. He wanted to know the best way to reach the cultural sports center. Ajin checked her phone and suggested he take a bus instead of the subway. The man told her not to rush and mentioned that there was a broadcast being filmed at the center. Before he could finish his sentence, Ajin interrupted, giving him the exact bus number. Then, without warning, he placed his hand on her shoulder and commented that she looked pretty up close. Ajin looked visibly afraid as the tall man continued speaking. He asked if she wanted to be an extra in his broadcast and told her to come with him for a camera test. He kept holding on to her and mentioned that she might meet celebrities at the filming site. Then he asked again if she was interested in going with him. His sudden shift in tone made her freeze. She couldn't speak or move. Fear took over, and she realized she was completely scared of him. Before she could react, another man stepped in and grabbed the tall man's wrist. The tall man struggled but couldn't break free. He demanded to know who the stranger was. Ajin felt a wave of relief. She recognized the new guy and noticed that he asked if she was okay. The tall man grew angrier. He started yelling, accusing the newcomer of interfering and telling him to let go. Instead, the newcomer twisted his arm and brought him to the ground. The tall man let out a loud cry as he hit the pavement. Moments later, the police arrived and took the tall man away. He shouted the whole time, claiming he wasn't a molester. Ajin, overwhelmed by everything, began crying. Through her tears, she said she would never fall for such a camera test scam. The man who helped her interrupted, telling her that if she couldn't use her hands, she should have used her feet. Then she recognized him. It was Park Junwoo, a top student from her school. Even though she didn't know many people at school, she knew of him. Still crying, she thanked him for stepping in. She said she thought she was going to die from fear and asked why he happened to be there. He simply smiled and replied that it wasn't any of her business. But now that he had saved her, he said she could do him a favor. She agreed right away because she didn't like being in debt to others. He laughed and said that all he wanted was to borrow her power bank. The request surprised her. She hesitated since it was her favorite item. He explained that he had been watching a basketball game when his phone battery died during the most important part. She tried to decline, saying she was about to go home and couldn't lend it out. At that moment, her friend noticed the two of them outside. Meanwhile, Junwoo kept pressing her, saying that if she didn't want to owe him, she should just hand it over. Inside the cafe, the boy sitting with Chohui asked her for an answer to his confession. But Chohui didn't respond. She kept staring through the window at the two people standing outside. After a brief pause, she stood up. She told him it wasn't the right time to talk about that, and that she needed more time to think. She gathered her things and explained that something urgent had come up. Then she told him she'd see him at school and left the cafe. Outside, Ajin was still asking Junwoo how much longer he needed the power bank. He said she should wait because he hadn't even plugged it in yet. Just then, Cho-hwee came over, grabbed Ajin by the arm, and told her it was time to go home. Junwoo watched the two girls as they walked off. He didn't quite understand what was happening. Cho-hwee gave him a quick smile as they left. She wondered if he might be connected to the boy who liked her, and if so, maybe he could be useful in the future. Cho-hwee kept pulling Ajin along without saying much. Eventually, Ajin asked what was going on. She wanted to know why Cho-hwee was in such a hurry, and reminded her that the power bank had been left behind. Cho-hwee smiled and said it was nothing serious. She explained that her mom kept calling and wanted her to come home quickly. Ajin gave her a hug and asked how things went inside the cafe. Choi replied that she would explain everything on the way home. The next morning, the girls said goodbye to each other before heading to their classes. They agreed to meet again at lunch. While walking down the hallway, Ajin realized she hadn't slept well. She kept thinking about her power bank. Maybe she should have left it at home. It felt almost like a family heirloom. In class, a group of girls stood by the window, saying that Junwoo was so handsome. They had enrolled in the school just because of him. Ajin walked past them and entered the classroom. She looked at Junwoo, who was surrounded by fans, and thought that the attention must be exhausting. But he didn't seem to care. She walked over and spoke quietly, asking if he remembered her and if he had the power bank. Junwoo stood up and said he had left it at home but offered to buy her a better one. Ajin panicked and told him that wasn't necessary. She said the old one was special and asked him to bring it the next day. As she looked at him, she began to wonder if he even realized it was broken and not working at all. Junwoo started to respond with a simple, "All right." But before he could finish, the teacher walked into the classroom. The teacher asked everyone to take their seats, noting that the bell had already rung. Later, when class ended and lunch began, Ajin and Cho-hwee sat together to eat. While they were eating, Cho-hwee asked if Junwoo had promised to bring the power bank tomorrow. Ajin said she had reminded him clearly, and he understood that he needed to return it. Choi then suggested that she could meet Junwoo after school to collect the power bank on Ajin's behalf. Ajin seemed surprised and asked if that would be too much trouble. Cho-hwee smiled and said it was no problem at all. She was happy to help. After school, the weather changed suddenly and it started to rain. On the bus, a few girls were glad they had brought umbrellas. Junwoo pressed the stop button to get off at the next stop. Choi happened to be on the same bus. She sat quietly, thinking about how she had always wanted to get closer to Junwoo. She never expected Ajin to be the one to help make that happen. As she stared at Junwoo's back, she wondered what she could do to speed things along. Her plan was simple. She hid her umbrella inside her bag and got off at the same stop as Junwoo. When the bus stopped, he opened his umbrella and stepped out. She followed him quickly and called out his name. As she caught up to him, Cho-hwee introduced herself as Ajin's friend. Acting cheerful, she told him that Ajin had asked her to come and pick up the power bank. Junwoo looked a little surprised. He said he had planned to give it back at school the next day. Choi smiled and insisted that Ajin wanted it back as soon as possible because it was important. Junwoo agreed and invited her to walk with him. They started walking together. After a while, Cho-hwee asked if his house was still far away since they had already been walking for a while. He stopped and told her to wait out front. That's when Cho-hwee noticed something strange. They had walked alongside a long wall the entire time. She asked if the wall belonged to his house. Junwoo simply confirmed it. Realizing the size of his home, Cho-hwee smiled to herself. She now knew he was rich, smart, and good-looking. In her mind, he checked all the boxes to be the perfect boyfriend. Trying to sound playful, Cho-hwee mentioned that she got caught in the rain and felt cold. She hinted that it might be nice to dry off inside for a little while. She made an effort to look pitiful, hoping he wouldn't turn her down. She added that she regretted not bringing her umbrella. Instead of inviting her in, Junwoo simply handed her his umbrella. He told her he'd be right back and that she could use it while waiting. Then he walked inside, leaving her standing outside. Cho-hwee was stunned. She stood still, unsure of what to say. Although annoyed by the situation, she accepted it. She thought to herself that if he had been too easy, It wouldn't have been interesting anyway. It had been a while since she felt this kind of challenge. The next day, at a convenience store, Ajin was feeling hungry. She had overslept and missed breakfast, so she decided to buy something small to last until lunch. She picked out a few items and went to the counter. The total was less than $5, but when the cashier tried to process her payment, he told her that her card didn't have enough funds. Surprised, Ajin realized she had already used up her allowance for the month. The line behind her started to grow. Embarrassed, she asked the cashier to charge only the banana milk instead. Even then, the card still didn't go through. The cashier asked if she had another card, and some people in line started to complain about the wait. Feeling more awkward, Ajin asked to cancel everything. Just then, someone behind her offered to pay. When she turned around, she saw Junwoo standing there. He paid for her items without hesitation. They left the store and started walking to school together. The atmosphere between them was a little awkward at first. Ajin broke the silence by thanking him and promised to pay him back the next day. Junwoo told her not to worry about it, reminding her that the matter with the power bank wasn't settled yet. She realized he wasn't as cold as he seemed. He had been thinking about returning the power bank the whole time. He joked that if he hadn't bought her the snack, he probably would have had to listen to her stomach growling all day. Meanwhile, Cho-hwee watched them from a distance. She couldn't understand why they were together, or why they seemed to be getting along. Later, back in the classroom, Ajin immediately asked Junwoo if he had her power bank. He told her that her friend had picked it up the day before. Relieved, Ajin smiled, glad to hear that Cho-hwee already had it. She planned to collect it from her later. After class, Ajin and Cho-hwee were walking upstairs together. Cho-hwee suddenly mentioned that she didn't have the power bank anymore because Junwoo had thrown it away. Ajin looked confused. Junwoo had told her the day before that her friend had taken it. Cho-hwee then asked directly if Ajin was choosing to believe Junwoo over her. Ajin replied with frustration. It wasn't about choosing sides. She just never thought Junwoo was the type to lie. She couldn't understand why he would say something different. Still feeling down about the power bank, Ajin was comforted by Cho-hwee, who reminded her that she knew how much that item meant to her. Ajin remembered the moment her father had given it to her for her birthday. That memory made the loss feel even heavier. Cho-hwee acknowledged how precious the charger was. But later, when she was alone in her room, she questioned why Ajin was so attached to something so cheap. It didn't even work well. That was the moment Cho-hwee decided to tell Ajin not to get close to Junwoo. The next morning, Ajin got ready to confront Junwoo, but she wasn't sure how to approach him. He didn't seem very interested in talking to her. Meanwhile, Cho-hwee grew tired of hearing Ajin talk about the portable charger. She questioned why Ajin cared so much about something from a person she barely knew. Choi reminded her that the charger barely worked and that she might never see the person who gave it to her again. Ajin responded by saying that Cho-hwee already knew how important it was to her, but Cho-hwee quickly changed the subject. She asked if Ajin could lend her a blanket, explaining that she had forgotten hers. When Ajin entered the room to get the blanket, she noticed a group of classmates gathered around her desk. Curious, she walked over and asked what was going on. One of the girls asked if it was Ajin's birthday. Someone had left a wrapped gift on her desk, but Ajin was confused. Her birthday wasn't today. She opened the box and was surprised to see a pink portable charger inside. It looked just like the one she had lost. Her name was even engraved on it. She wondered who could have left it. At first, she thought maybe it was Cho-hwee trying to cheer her up. But that didn't make sense. They had come to school together. Some classmates commented on how pretty the charger looked. A few of them wondered if there might be a note inside revealing who sent the gift. Just then, Junwoo entered the classroom and asked Choi to move aside so he could pass. She greeted him in a cheerful tone, trying to sound cute, but he ignored her completely. Cho-hwee noticed the cold response and realized Junwoo might be the only person in the school who didn't react to her charm. She figured it was because he only cared about studying. Still, she thought that was better than someone who flirted with everyone. Around Ajin, some classmates started whispering, wondering if she had a secret crush. Ajin quickly denied it, saying it wasn't like that. But even she was curious about who had left the portable charger. At his desk, Junwoo watched Ajin closely, paying attention to her expressions and reactions. Cho-hee noticed his gaze and began to grow suspicious. However, she didn't think it was possible that he liked Ajin. To change the subject, Cho-hee brought up the blanket. Ajin apologized for the delay, handed it over, and asked if they could meet during lunch. Before walking away, Cho-hee glanced back at Junwoo again to see if he was still watching, but he appeared focused on his studies. Soon after, the teacher entered and announced that the next class would be first aid training. It would be a practical lesson on how to save lives. Everyone gathered at the school court. Ajin, while standing among the students, kept thinking about the charger. She wondered again who had given it to her. Could it really have been June? Even though Cho-hee claimed he had thrown the old one away and Junwoo said he gave it to her friend, Ajin still had doubts. She wasn't sure who to believe. The teacher began the demonstration, showing how to do chest compressions. After performing a few rounds, he asked the class if they understood, then told them to split into pairs to practice. Ajin quickly turned to a girl beside her and suggested they team up, but the teacher explained that it needed to be a boy-girl pair. He said if two boys practiced together, they might damage the dummy. Ajin grew nervous. She didn't want to partner with Junwoo. But the teacher noticed her hesitation and said she could pair up with him since they were standing nearby. That wasn't what she wanted to hear. As they began the training, Ajin kept a little distance. Junwoo focused on the demonstration, practicing on the dummy. The teacher complimented his technique and then asked why Ajin wasn't participating yet. Junwoo invited Ajin to give the chest compressions a try. She started practicing, clearly nervous, but it didn't take long for Junwoo to notice she was barely applying pressure. He joked that the dummy was already dead. Embarrassed, Ajin insisted it wasn't true, but Junwoo continued teasing. He told her that if the dummy were a real person, they wouldn't have made it. Ajin explained she was just afraid of pressing too hard and accidentally hurting someone. Junwoo told her that was a common concern. He said that during real emergencies, broken ribs sometimes happen. That shocked Ajin. He explained that saving a life is more important than a few broken bones. They continued the practice. The teacher watched from nearby, happy to see them working together. Then another teacher called him over. It was starting to rain, and they needed to share the court with another class. Since they only needed part of the court for training, he agreed. Soon, the second class arrived. Among them was Cho-hee, who immediately noticed Ajin and Junwoo practicing together. Following the instructions, Ajin pushed harder on the dummy's chest. The sensation made her uncomfortable, especially the sound it made. Junwoo laughed at her reaction and told her that wasn't the right technique. He offered to show her how. He reached out, grabbed her hand, and placed it on the dummy. But Ajin wasn't expecting it. She lost her balance and fell onto him. It almost looked like a romantic scene from a movie. The teacher quickly stepped in and reminded them to focus on first aid, not flirting. Everyone around them laughed, but Cho-hee wasn't amused. She stood to the side, clearly irritated. She had warned Ajin not to get close to Junwoo. Later, back in class, Ajin tried to figure out why Cho-hee seemed upset. She asked if she was feeling okay. Cho-hee simply said her stomach hadn't felt good since the night before, and that the physical activity made it worse. Ajin offered to take her to the infirmary for some medicine and rest, but Cho-hee refused. She said she just needed a short nap and suggested they go eat since lunch break was almost over. But in truth, Cho-hee was thinking something completely different. She couldn't even stand to look at Ajin's face anymore. Cho-hee couldn't take the situation any longer. She asked Ajin to go get lunch alone and pretend they were together. She claimed it was only because she didn't want Ajin to skip a meal. Ajin was touched by the gesture. She agreed to go alone and told Cho-hee not to worry. She should just rest and take her medicine. But in truth, Cho-hee was thinking about how to create distance between Ajin and Junwoo. She hoped the charger hadn't come from him. At the cafeteria, Ajin felt a bit awkward sitting alone. Eating by herself made her uncomfortable. But before long, Junwoo and his friend showed up and asked where Cho-hee was. Without waiting, Junwoo pulled out a chair and sat next to her. Ajin was surprised. Then he handed her his sausages. His friend looked annoyed. The sausages were the best part of lunch, and he had wanted them for himself. Ajin assumed Junwoo was doing all this because he still felt guilty about the lost charger. Trying to lighten the mood, Junwoo joked that she needed to eat more and get stronger, especially after falling on top of him during training. Ajin was embarrassed. She quickly said that she only fell because he had pulled her so suddenly. Junwoo's friend grew suspicious. It wasn't like Junwoo to talk to girls, let alone share his food. Ajin kept eating but couldn't stop thinking about how to bring up the new charger. Still, part of her was glad she didn't have to eat alone. Realizing this made her feel uneasy. She tried to convince herself that she was fine on her own and didn't need anyone. After a while, Junwoo's friend stood up to get more food. Meanwhile, Ajin stayed focused on her plan to talk about the charger. Junwoo seemed confused, watching her continue to eat without stopping. The next morning, Ajin left the house late and nearly missed the bus. She caught it just in time before it pulled away. As expected, the bus was crowded and there were no empty seats. That's when she spotted Junwoo sitting quietly. The memory of falling on top of him came rushing back, and she immediately felt embarrassed. To make things worse, Ajin remembered how Junwoo had joked about her falling on him during lunch. Embarrassed all over again, she made a silent decision. She'd ignore him completely. Pretend he didn't exist. Pretend she didn't hear him, see him, or even remember the sound of his laugh. The bus driver suddenly announced that there had been an accident ahead. Traffic was backing up, and more passengers were expected to board at the next stop. The front of the bus started getting crowded. Passengers began shuffling to the back to make room. Ajin stayed where she was. She didn't want to move closer to Junwoo, but the driver wasn't having it. He scolded her, telling her to move back like everyone else. Junwoo, watching the whole thing, let out a chuckle. That laugh, it made her cheeks burn. Humiliated, she inched her way toward the back, doing her best to act invisible. Junwoo pointed to the space near him and casually said, "You can stand here." "There's room." Reluctantly, she took the spot. She told herself she was only doing it to avoid another scolding. Junwoo thought for a moment. Maybe he should offer her his seat. But before he could, the bus made a sharp turn. Everyone staggered, struggling to keep their balance. Ajin lost hers entirely. She stumbled, right into Junwoo's lap. The silence between them shattered. Her eyes went wide. His did too. In a panic, she scrambled up, but in the rush, her head smacked against his chin. They both winced in pain. "Sorry," she blurted out, red-faced. "I didn't mean to fall on your thighs." Junwoo managed a soft smile, trying to hide his own fluster. He'd caught a faint, sweet scent from her hair, something soft and familiar. "It's okay," he said. "It happens." They both avoided eye contact after that. Finally, the bus rolled to a stop outside the school and everyone began filing off. Ajin and Junwoo walked behind the others, keeping a small distance between them. But she couldn't wait any longer. Now was her moment. She took a breath and turned to him. "Hey," she said. "Was it you who left that charger on my desk yesterday?" Junwoo glanced at her, and she hurried to explain. I didn't think it could be anyone else. So, thank you. It's really pretty." He looked surprised for a second, then smiled. "A real one." "I'm glad you liked it," he said quietly. "I bought it for you. I figured it was the least I could do." Ajin blinked. "Wait, so you didn't throw the old one away?" Junwoo shook his head. "Number it was already pretty much broken, so I just thought I'd get you a better one. I felt responsible." She stared at him, puzzled. That didn't match anything Cho-hwee had told her. So, why did Cho-hwee say he'd thrown it away? Ajin's thoughts tangled, and somewhere deep down, something began to shift. Ajin decided not to press further. Instead, she smiled and thanked Junwoo again, saying she'd definitely used the charger a lot. As they spoke, across the street, Cho-hwee was watching. Seeing the friendly atmosphere between them made her increasingly jealous and irritated. In her mind, Junwoo should be interested in her, not Ajin. Frustrated, Cho-hui quickly messaged the guy who had confessed to her earlier. She asked to meet up, which caught him off guard but made him excited. He thought she might finally be giving him a chance. She also asked him to bring a friend, claiming that her own friend was really into him. It was all part of her plan to create the perfect setup and to get closer to Junwoo. When the day of the meetup arrived, Junwoo was standing in front of the movie theater, waiting for his friend. He sent a message asking if he was on the way. That's when he heard a voice calling his name. It was Cho-hui. She walked up to him with 2 drinks, coffee and soda, and offered them casually. Junwoo looked confused. He asked why she was there and why she brought drinks. Cho-hui explained that they were about to watch a movie together. Junwoo replied that he wasn't watching any movie with her. His movie was about to start, and she should leave. While he tried calling his friend to understand the situation, the friend, Jong, picked up and quickly apologized. He explained that he had agreed to go out with Cho-hui's friend because he liked her. But to make the meetup work, Cho-hui had suggested that Junwoo could pair off with her. Jong said that Cho-hui thought it would be more natural if they watched the movie as 2 separate pairs instead of a group. Junwoo looked even more confused. He told his friend that Cho-hui was already there with him, but before he could finish, Cho-hui grabbed the phone and ended the call. She admitted everything. She told Junwoo that she had planned this and liked him. She even said the story about picking up Ajin's charger had been a lie. She had made it up just to get a chance to talk to him. Now, she stood in front of him, waiting for a response. It finally dawned on Junwoo. Everything had been a setup from the beginning. Cho-hui had orchestrated the entire situation. Before he could say a word, she asked him what he thought of her. She said she wanted him to get to know her better. He didn't respond to the question. Instead, he calmly asked for his phone back. Cho-hui refused. She told him that if it was because of Jongmin, she'd make things right. She'd reject him. Then she looked at Junwoo and asked again, more directly this time, what did he feel for her? He stayed quiet. For a moment, it felt like she had won. She believed his silence meant he was seriously considering her feelings, maybe even moved by them. She was convinced he'd say yes. But then he broke the silence. His voice was steady and firm. I don't like you. Those 4 words hit her like a slap. Her smile faded instantly. It didn't make sense. No one had ever rejected her before. She wasn't used to hearing no. Shaken, she tried to recover her composure. Her instinct was to cry, to pull him into guilt. Tears welled up in her eyes as she asked, how can you reject me without even thinking about it? But Junwoo didn't flinch. He told her there was nothing to think about. He was sure of how he felt. He asked again for his phone. She still didn't return it. Instead, she pleaded, asking him to take more time, to give her a chance. But he was done. His patience had run out. He pushed her hand away and warned her not to touch him. If you want to keep the phone, then keep it, he said coldly, turning away. Stunned, she stood there, alone outside the cinema, furious and humiliated. She wasn't used to losing. Not like this. Her pride couldn't handle it. She called out after him, one last time, trying to draw him back. Take your phone. He turned around slowly, his eyes filled with frustration. I don't like you. Whether it's good or bad, I'm not interested in you, he said. The only thing I want is for you to reject Jongmin properly and apologize. That was the end of it, or so it should have been. As Junwoo walked away, Cho-hui stood frozen. She looked down at the drinks she was still holding. And then, in a sudden outburst, she dropped them to the ground. The coffee splashed everywhere. She screamed, pretending the coffee had burned her. And as she predicted, Junwoo turned around. He ran over, concerned, asking if she was okay. Cho-hui clutched her wrist and cried harder. It hurts, she sobbed. Junwoo didn't say much. He simply took off toward the nearest pharmacy and came back minutes later with bandages and burn ointment. She sat down while he quietly treated her fake injury. Inside, she was thrilled. Even if he didn't love her, he was still showing her kindness. And in Cho Hui's mind, that meant there was still a chance. A small opening. A crack she could slip through. Because in her world, attention was currency. And she wasn't done playing yet. For the first time, Cho Hui felt like she was truly falling for someone. As Junwoo focused on wrapping her hand, she mentioned that her heart was racing, because he was holding her hand. He quickly stood up, let go, and said he was leaving. Cho Hui believed he was just embarrassed and didn't know how to handle his feelings. Before he walked away, she handed him his phone and quietly apologized for her earlier behavior. He didn't say anything. He just turned and walked off. She stayed behind, completely love-struck, convinced he was shy and flustered. But she was mistaken. Later that day, at Cho Hui's house, Ajin arrived in a rush. She was worried about her friend's injury. Cho Hui, still lying down, asked her to lower her voice. She said she had a bad headache. Ajin noticed the bandages on Cho Hui's hand were done poorly. She asked to take a closer look, but Cho Hui quickly pulled her hand back. She remembered Junwoo bandaging her earlier and didn't want to reveal anything. Ajin assumed her friend was just in pain, but Cho Hui explained she didn't want anyone touching the burn. Inside, she reminded herself to be more careful. She couldn't let her real feelings slip. Then, Cho Hui quickly changed the subject. She asked about the delicious smell coming from what Ajin had brought with her. It was a small bun. Ajin had made it after hearing about her friend's injury. She brought it as a gesture of care. Cho Hui smiled and said she loved Ajin's homemade buns. She suggested they go to her room, eat, and watch Netflix. Of course, Cho Hui planned to keep acting sick to make Ajin do everything for her. She claimed her hand still hurt and asked Ajin to set the table. While setting things up, Ajin noticed the trash bin was in the way. She moved it aside, but something inside caught her attention. She looked closer and spotted something pink, her old portable charger. She picked it up and saw her name engraved on it. Confused, she turned to Choi and asked why her charger was in the trash. Choi, distracted and admiring her bandaged hand, realized too late. She had forgotten to take out the trash. And now, the evidence was sitting right in front of them. Ajin kept thinking about the situation. She couldn't understand why the charger had ended up at Choi's house if Junwoo hadn't thrown it there. Choi didn't know how to respond. She looked at Ajin, silently trying to come up with a way out. Eventually, she said that she had found the charger in Junwoo's trash. She explained that she had been passing by his house, saw something pink in the bin, and realized it was a portable charger. She claimed that she took it because it felt wrong to leave it there. According to her, it was too cold-hearted of Junwoo to throw it away, so she decided to keep it for her friend. But the explanation didn't hold up for long. Ajin remembered that Chi disliked touching anything dirty. That detail didn't add up. Chi tried to keep the story going. She said she only took it because she knew how important it was to Ajin. She insisted that even though she hated doing something like that, she had done it out of care for her friend. She added that she hadn't returned it earlier because she couldn't remember where she had put it. She also said she felt hurt being questioned by someone she cared about. Ajin, still unsure but wanting to believe her, gave Chi a hug. She accepted the explanation and thanked her friend for doing something difficult just to help. The issue was dropped and things returned to normal. The next day at school, the teacher announced a new assignment. Students would have to work in pairs. To avoid any problems, the teacher explained that the pairs had already been assigned. The class didn't like the idea, but the teacher asked them to check the list before complaining. Everyone rushed to the paper, eager to see who would be Junwoo's partner. It turned out to be Ajin. Some students said she was lucky. Junwoo was known for being smart. A few of the girls felt jealous. They had wanted to be his partner too. Ajin, however, wasn't excited. She still felt awkward being around Junwoo after everything that had happened. She walked up to him and asked when they should start the assignment. Instead of waiting for her to speak, Junwoo took the lead. He said they needed to set a time soon since the school schedule was tight this semester. They agreed to meet on Saturday. When Saturday arrived, the weather was clear. Spring flowers were blooming, and Ajin thought it might be nice to hang out with Chi after finishing the assignment. She arrived at the cafe a little early and found a seat. The place was busy and full of people. She began organizing her things on the table while waiting for Junwoo. As she adjusted her setup, her hand bumped into her cup. It nearly tipped over. She caught it at the last second, but the sudden movement caused a mess. Holding the cup in one hand and her laptop in the other, she felt like she was going to drop something. At that moment, Junwoo showed up. He reached out and caught the cup before it hit the ground. Ajin was surprised to see him arrive at exactly that moment. She also felt a bit embarrassed. He told her to go wash her hands and said he'd call someone over to clean the table. She hesitated. She felt responsible and wanted to clean it herself. But he was already walking toward the counter, repeating that she should just wash up. While washing her hands, she got a message from Chi. Chi said she wouldn't be able to meet that day because of a modeling job. Ajin was impressed. Her friend always seemed to be doing something cool. Inspired, she felt motivated to do her best too. When she returned to the table, the mess was gone. Everything was clean and in order. Junwoo had even brought her another drink. It looked like a banana smoothie. She thanked him. He noticed and commented that she always seemed to be drinking something banana-flavored. She said it was simple. She just really liked bananas. Then he sat down next to her, not across from her. She wondered why. He said he wanted to sit there so he could keep an eye on her, just in case she got clumsy again. She felt a little embarrassed, but told him that even though she wasn't great at studying, she always pulled her weight in group projects. She said she wouldn't be a burden. He smiled at that and told her to open her laptop. Then he said he was impressed she remembered to bring it. Sometimes it felt like Junwoo only showed up to tease her. Still, Ajin appreciated that he had helped her. Elsewhere, Choi finished her modeling job. She thanked the team and headed out. She didn't want to go home yet. It was still early and she had nothing to do there. She started thinking about who she could invite to hang out. That's when she noticed several unread messages from Young Min. He had been trying to reach her. She had told him she was sick to avoid going to the movies with him. Now, she debated whether she should explain or just be direct. In the end, she sent a message saying she liked someone else and didn't want him to contact her anymore. It was a harsh message, but she sent it without hesitation. With no other plans, she remembered that Ajin had mentioned the cafe where she would be doing her assignment. Choi decided to go there. That's when things took a turn. She arrived at the cafe and spotted Ajin sitting with someone. The guy's back was to her, so she couldn't see who it was. She hadn't expected the assignment partner to be a male classmate. Before walking over, she paused to fix her appearance. She checked her reflection and applied a bit of lip gloss. Meanwhile, Ajin was quietly impressed. Junwoo was writing the entire assignment in English. He didn't even need a translator. He worked quickly and confidently. Then his phone rang. It was Young, who was clearly upset. He had just been rejected and needed someone to talk to. Junwoo looked annoyed. He seemed to guess that Choi hadn't handled the situation gently. After the call, he told Ajin that something had come up and he needed to leave. Most of the work was already done. He told her she just needed to finish the design part. Ajin understood and told him to go ahead. She said not to worry. She would handle the rest. She felt motivated to do a good job, especially since he had already done so much. Choi was still nearby, pretending to check her makeup in the mirror. She overheard Junwoo talking on the phone again. He said he was heading to another friend's house to meet Young Min. Only then did she realize the guy sitting with Ajin had been Junwoo all along. Instead of saying anything, she sat down at a nearby table behind Ajin. She waited in silence while Ajin kept working. Eventually, the protagonist stood up and headed to the bathroom. While Ajin was away, Choi saw a chance to cause trouble. She thought that if the project files disappeared, Junwoo wouldn't get a good grade. That would likely make him upset with Ajin. She tried to open Ajin's laptop, but it was locked with a password. Her first guess was Ajin's birthday. It didn't work. She kept trying different combinations. After a few more failed attempts, she hesitated but decided to try one more. To her surprise, the password turned out to be her own birthday. She paused. Realizing Ajin had used her birthday made her feel something unexpected. It was a reminder that her friend really did care about her. Because of that, she changed her mind. Instead of deleting the whole file, she removed everything except the first and last page. Then she arranged the screen so that when Ajin returned, she'd just send the email without double-checking the content. Choi felt excited thinking about how surprised Ajin would be when the mistake was discovered. The next day, the teacher began class by talking about the assignments. She said some groups hadn't submitted their work, even though she had made it clear that missing the deadline would affect their grade. Then, she started reading out the names of the students who didn't turn anything in. Ajin and Junwoo were on the list. They were both shocked. The entire class began to whisper and react. Everyone knew Junwoo was one of the top students in English. It didn't make sense that he hadn't submitted the assignment. People started guessing that the issue might have been Ajin's fault. Ajin quickly spoke up. She said she had sent the assignment and asked the teacher to check her email again. The teacher confirmed that a file was sent, but there seemed to be a problem. She asked if Ajin had reviewed the document before sending it. Ajin opened the file to see what was wrong. She was stunned. Only the first and last page were there. Junwoo's entire portion of the project was missing. The class started to laugh and make comments. Some said they must have spent all their time on the design and forgotten to do the actual work. Ajin began to panic. She realized that Junwoo's grade might suffer because of this. She couldn't understand what had happened. She was sure she had checked the file before sending it. Feeling embarrassed, she asked the teacher if there was any way to get more time and resend the assignment. Junwoo finally spoke up. He apologized to the teacher and said there had been a mistake. He explained that he had just resent the assignment file. Ajin was surprised. She hadn't known he still had a copy of the files. The teacher accepted the explanation, more or less, but said they needed to be fair to the other students who submitted their work on time. So, she asked Junwoo and Ajin to present their assignment in front of the class. Ajin became nervous right away. She wasn't prepared to speak. Junwoo told her not to worry. He said she only needed to handle changing the slides. Even though she trusted he would do well, she still felt uneasy. She knew this was all happening because of her mistake. As soon as Junwoo began the presentation in English, the class grew quiet. Everyone was impressed by how clearly and fluently he spoke. The teacher seemed pleased. She had expected him to do well. Even Ajin was surprised. She knew he was good at English, but not that good. When the lunch bell rang, the class rushed to the cafeteria. Ajin called out to Junwoo before he could leave. She told him how impressed she was by the way he spoke, especially without any preparation. She added that now she understood why everyone had been jealous that she was paired with him. Then, before he could reply, she quickly apologized. She said she had checked the file before sending it and didn't know how the problem happened. She told him she wanted to find a way to return the favor. Just as Junwoo began to say it was fine and that she didn't need to worry, Young appeared. He interrupted and called Junwoo to go eat lunch with him. Junwoo left with Young, leaving Ajin alone in the classroom. Even though Junwoo told her it was okay, Ajin couldn't stop thinking about how to make it up to him. Meanwhile, Choi was walking around the school looking for Ajin. She wanted to see how upset Ajin was. She assumed Junwoo must have blamed her and that she would be feeling miserable. When she finally found her, Choi smiled and asked how things were going. To her surprise, Ajin seemed cheerful, much more than she had expected. Ajin explained everything that had happened. She talked about how Junwoo had saved the presentation and how well he had spoken. She said they would probably still get a good grade. Now she was trying to decide which snack to buy to thank him. Choi listened, but she was clearly irritated. Her plan had completely backfired. In the school courtyard, Young was talking with Junwoo. He said things weren't going the way he had hoped. Junwoo asked what he meant. Young explained it was about Choi. They had talked the day before, and things seemed fine. He had felt better afterward. But today, those feelings had come back. Even when he tried to avoid her at school, his heart still raced when he saw her. He said it was the first time he had ever felt that way. Even knowing she liked someone else, he thought maybe there was still a chance. Junwoo disagreed. He told Young not to get his hopes up and said he was just imagining things. But Young didn't listen. He said Junwoo didn't understand love at all. Since the school trip was coming up, he planned to use that time to get closer to Choi. Junwoo remembered when Choi had confessed her feelings to him. He told Young to drop the idea and focus on studying. He reminded him that if his grades dropped, he'd lose his phone. Young didn't care. He said love was more important than school and that Junwoo wouldn't understand because all he did was study. Young added that Junwoo didn't have anyone he wanted to see the spring flowers with. That comment made Junwoo pause. For some reason, he thought of Ajin, specifically how impressed she had looked during the English presentation. Meanwhile, someone else wasn't happy about how close Junwoo and Ajin were getting. Choi was starting to regret everything she had done. Her efforts to sabotage Ajin hadn't worked. In fact, it seemed like she had only helped bring the two of them closer. Ajin didn't even seem to care about Choi's warnings to stay away from Junwoo. That made her even more irritated. Later, Choi came home, tired and with a headache. She just wanted to rest. But as she opened the front door, she heard raised voices. Her father had shown up. He was asking her mother for a divorce. The argument in Choi's house continued. She couldn't understand why her father even came around anymore. Every time he did, it ended in a fight. This time was no different. Her father said he had found someone else. That was why he wanted a divorce. Choi felt overwhelmed. Things at school were already hard enough, and now she had to deal with this all over again at home. Her father, angry and aggressive, raised his voice and told her mother to sign the divorce papers. He said that in the end, she would do what he wanted, whether she liked it or not. Choi had heard enough. She asked him if he planned to leave the other woman too. She questioned what the point of the divorce even was. Her father didn't like being challenged. Without saying anything more, he slapped Choi across the face. That moment said a lot about the kind of man he was, and gave some insight into how Choi's thinking had become so twisted. Her mother stood up then. She told him he had no right to lay a hand on their daughter. She told him to leave and said she wasn't giving him the divorce. Eventually, he left the house. Choi's mother tried to comfort her, but Choi pulled away and said her father wasn't even human anymore. She told her mother to just sign the papers. She said that after everything, after being hit, it made no sense to protect him. Her mother, still holding on to some hope, told her not to say that. She reminded her that, no matter what, he was still her father. That only made Choi angrier. She yelled at her mother, saying she was worse than her father for letting things get this far. Then she stormed into her room and locked the door. Inside, she sat down and started thinking about her life. She wondered how she could ever change it. But her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed a box of sweets on her desk. Ajin had sent them, along with a note saying how much she cared about her friend. That made Choi even more upset. She knocked the cookies onto the floor in frustration. To her, everything always worked out for Ajin, but nothing ever seemed to work out for her. In that moment, she made a decision. All the anger and hate she had been holding inside would now become a plan to destroy Ajin. Later that night, at Junwoo's house, he was in the middle of a private lesson with his tutor, but he couldn't concentrate. His mind kept going back to the moment with the spring flowers. He wondered why, at that time, he had thought of Ajin. His tutor noticed he was distracted and asked if something was on his mind. The tutor commented that it was the first time he had seen Junwoo this distracted. Junwoo brushed it off and said he was just spacing out. But the tutor pushed a little further. He asked if maybe Junwoo was interested in someone. Before he could answer, Junwoo's thoughts drifted again, to Ajin. For the first time, he blushed while thinking about her. The tutor reminded him to focus and continued with the lesson. Meanwhile, at Ajin's house, she was in the kitchen, baking cookies. She planned to give them to her friends during the school trip the next day. Her parents came home from work. They told her not to stay up too late since she had a big day tomorrow. Ajin said she was almost done and would go to bed soon. They smiled and said her friends were lucky to have someone like her. Her father, happy to see her in a good mood, gave her some money. He told her to enjoy the trip and maybe buy a few small gifts. Back in her room, Ajin started packing. She decided to bring her portable charger. Looking at the 2 chargers she now had, she remembered something from a year ago. It was during camp at Y University. In the dorm, Ajin had tried to convince the other girls to stay the night. It was their first day of camp, and she thought it would be fun. But the others weren't interested. They said they only signed up for the extra credit and didn't want to spend the whole night there. They also mentioned that Ajin had been scolded in class earlier for dozing off, and she didn't seem to care about her grades anyway. The group agreed to leave together. Ajin, not wanting to be left alone, decided to go with them. Later, they tried to sneak out quietly in the dark, but they were caught when the hallway lights came on. The instructor's assistant had been waiting and stopped them. Ajin was caught off guard. She was impressed by him. Calm, direct, and sharp. In that moment, she blushed and realized she might be feeling something new. Maybe for the first time, she was experiencing what people call love at first sight. Back then, Ajin didn't know where she got the courage. But she remembered walking up to him and asking for his phone number. They started talking almost every day. But everything changed when he got a girlfriend. Even though she had never confessed her feelings, it still broke her heart. She realized then that to him, she might have just been a student he met during camp. And in that moment, something else became clear. The portable charger wasn't a gift from her father after all. It had been from him, her very first crush. She smiled as she looked at the charger. She wondered how he was doing now. Back in the present, the scene shifted to Y University. Her former crush was standing on campus, surrounded by a group of girls. They were congratulating him on getting a teaching internship. They asked him where he would be working. He told them, Sarin High School. So that was the little spoiler for what's coming next. Now, it was finally the day of the school trip. The students were complaining, saying they wished they were going to an island or somewhere farther away. Ajin wasn't focused on that. She was only worried about one thing, where her friend Choi was. She called her and asked to meet before they left. There was something she needed to give her. When Ajin turned around, she saw Choi approaching. She was all dressed up, wearing a crop shirt. It was clear she hadn't come to the trip just to relax. She had come to be seen. Ajin scolded her, saying the outfit showed too much skin. Choi pulled away and told her to stop tugging at her clothes. She said she was fine the way she was. Just then, the crowd grew quiet. Everyone turned to look at Junwoo. Even Ajin and Choi paused, surprised at how good he looked in casual clothes. Some girls rushed over to him. They complimented him and asked if he had already chosen a seat for the train ride. Meanwhile, Junwoo's friends were getting ready for the trip in their own way. They had brought alcohol and were already talking about inviting some girls to hang out later. Choi immediately paid attention. She wanted to get closer to Junwoo during the trip. The boys mentioned that the room they planned to use for the hangout was going to be Ajin's. Choi stepped into the conversation and called out to Youngmin. He was caught off guard. He hadn't expected her to speak to him. She said she didn't mean to interrupt, but their night sounded fun, and she wanted to join. Youngmin, clearly excited, said yes right away. He thought it was amazing that she wanted to be there. Soon after, the students began settling in on the train. They found their seats, took pictures, and laughed with their friends. But Choi didn't feel comfortable. She didn't understand why everyone was taking so many photos. After all, it was just a train ride. She shrank back into her seat, trying to avoid being in any pictures. Earlier that morning, before she left home, her mother had handed her an envelope full of money. She said it was from her father, for Choi to spend during the trip. Choi got angry. She threw the envelope aside, saying there was no point in giving her money now, not after everything he had done. But as always, her mother only said that she shouldn't speak badly about her father. In another train car, Ajin was feeling too warm. She had worn a long-sleeved shirt and now regretted it. She tried calling Choi to ask if she wanted to go to the vending machine with her, But Choi was asleep, so Ajin decided to go alone. When she reached the vending area, she saw Junwoo already there, getting a drink. He noticed her and asked if she wanted something. She looked at the options and pointed to the green apple drink he had just taken. She said it looked good and that she'd get the same. But when she reached for one, she realized there were none left. The last one had been the one Junwoo was holding. Without thinking twice, he offered it to her. He said it was meant for Youngmin, but since Youngmin was sleeping, she could have it. Ajin asked if he was sure. He said it was fine. She smiled and took the drink. For a moment, Junwoo didn't respond. He just stood there, watching her. He seemed to forget what he was about to say. But then the quiet moment was interrupted. Another student rushed into the train car and accidentally bumped into Ajin. She lost her balance, and it nearly caused another one of those classic almost kiss moments. Junwoo apologized quickly as they both recovered from the sudden jolt. Ajin felt a small pain in her eyes. Her glasses had been bumped during the accident. Junwoo noticed the scent of green apple again. She looked at him, now without her glasses, and asked if he was okay. Instead of answering, he quickly pushed her away. Ajin didn't understand why he did that. The moment reminded her of the first time they met, in the park. Back then, he had saved her from a strange man and asked why she didn't use her legs if her hands were full. She also remembered what Choi had told her, that Junwoo had thrown her portable charger in the trash. Without thinking, she asked him why he was always so mean to her. Junwoo realized then that she had misunderstood everything. It was clear she thought he disliked her. On impulse, he said something unexpected. He told her he actually liked her. Ajin froze. She didn't know how to react. Nothing made sense. She tried to figure it out but couldn't. She asked him why. Why would he like her? Before she could come up with an answer, he started laughing. He said her expression was incredible. Then he added that he liked her because her reactions were always funny. Ajin misunderstood completely. She got angry and embarrassed. She cursed at him and hit him. He said that hurt. She told him he deserved it and walked away. He called out to her, but she ignored him. He stood there, confused. He didn't understand why she was so upset. Meanwhile, Ajin was in tears. She thought it wasn't fair. Even if he was the top student, he didn't have the right to treat her like that. She didn't want to feel like a joke or a toy. She remembered the day they met at the cafe. Back then, he had helped her and offered her a new drink after she spilled hers. In that moment, she had thought he was kind. Now she wasn't sure what to believe. If his confession had been a lie, she didn't know how to handle it. She couldn't tell if he was just playing with her or if he had meant what he said. Later, at the trip destination, the students gathered to take a group photo. The teacher told them to behave, not to cause trouble, and reminded them to meet back at the same spot by 6 o'clock. Everyone agreed and then split off in different directions. Choi, unaware of what had happened on the train, was walking around looking for Junwoo. But before she could find him, she was stopped by 3 guys, locals, by the looks of it. They started hitting on her. Choi quickly realized they were just playboys and tried to ignore them. She kept walking, but they didn't back off. One of them asked for her phone number and casually put his arm around her to stop her. Trying to stay calm, Choi offered to give her Instagram instead. She said he could message her anytime and she wouldn't ignore him. Still, he insisted on getting her number. Choi kept offering her Instagram ID, hoping that would be enough to get him to let go. Now surrounded and unsure of how to get out of the situation, she started to feel nervous. And the truth was, she didn't even want to give them her Instagram. Right then, Ajin showed up. She shouted that the teacher had told them not to talk to people outside their school. Then she grabbed Choi's hand and ran. The guys didn't follow, but it didn't seem like they were going to forget what happened either. Ajin and Choi kept running, not looking back. Ajin was furious. She couldn't believe those guys tried something like that with her friend. She didn't even realize what moments like these meant, how her loyalty always showed up when it mattered. To ease the tension, Choi made a joke. She said Ajin didn't need to talk so formally about those guys. They were probably only a year older and might even be on their own school trip. She laughed about it. Ajin was surprised at how relaxed Choi was. She said they didn't look like they were still in school. In fact, they looked way too tired and worn out for their age. Both girls laughed and kept walking, letting the moment pass. Later that night, back at the lodging, the girls in Ajin's room were waiting. They were wondering where the rest of their group was. Ajin asked who exactly they were waiting for. Just then, the door opened. Youngmin walked in with his friends, and they were carrying a suitcase, most likely full of drinks. Choi came in with them, and behind her was Junwoo. The girls weren't thrilled to see Choi. Ajin, still unaware, hadn't even noticed that Junwoo was there. He hadn't come for the party. He didn't even like these types of gatherings. He had only come to apologize to her. When Ajin finally noticed Junwoo in the room, her mood changed. She felt a little discouraged. Meanwhile, the other girls were excited. Everyone settled down, chatting and snacking on chips. But the tension between Junwoo and Ajin hung in the air. They began talking about what game to play. Youngmin suggested playing Truth or Dare. Just as they were about to begin, a loud noise came from outside. Other students were knocking on the door, asking what was going on inside the room. The girls inside quickly tried to come up with a plan. They decided to pretend they were all asleep. Some people threw blankets over themselves. Others ran into the bathroom. Ajin ended up under a blanket. Someone opened the door. It was the instructor. He looked around, saw the lights off and people lying down, and assumed everyone was asleep. After a moment, he left. Ajin stayed still under the blanket. Her neck started to feel stiff. She thought Choi was next to her, pressing down on her head. She whispered for her friend to stop, but someone told her to stay quiet. Then her phone alarm went off, lighting up the space under the blanket. That's when she saw who was beside her. It wasn't Choi. It was Junwoo. They both froze, faces close, just looking at each other. Neither of them moved until the alarm stopped ringing. Then, silently and awkwardly, they both turned their heads away. Ajin's heart started racing. She wanted to disappear. She tried to think of a way to get out without anyone noticing. She convinced herself that Junwoo would probably push her away again, just like he did on the train. And then he'd laugh at her. For some reason, she had it in her head that he didn't like her at all. They stayed quiet, still hidden, until someone said the coast was clear and the lights could be turned on. As soon as the room lit up, Youngmin stepped on something. It was Ajin's glasses. Junwoo sat up and pulled the blanket off both of them. Ajin noticed that he looked angry. She didn't understand why. She hadn't asked to be in that situation. And even though she didn't like how close they'd gotten, she was even more confused by the look on his face. Why was he mad? If none of this was her fault. In reality, Junwoo wasn't angry. He was just embarrassed. He had only come to the room to apologize for what happened on the train. He hadn't expected to end up under a blanket with Ajin, inches from her face. He got up and went to check if she was okay. But when he looked at her, she seemed frozen in shock. It wasn't just from the awkward moment. It was because Youngmin had stepped on her glasses and broken them. Youngmin quickly apologized, flustered. But in his nervousness, he said her name wrong. Instead of Ajin, he called her Adek, a name that sounded more like a puppy. The entire room burst into laughter. Youngmin looked even more embarrassed. Not only had he broken her glasses, but now he had also messed up her name. Ajin tried to brush it off. She said it was fine and that she would just go to the doctor tomorrow to get new glasses. With that, they all went back to what they were doing before. The game. The first person to pick a paper was Choi. Her task was to give a snack to someone she wanted to get closer to. She chose Youngmin. He looked surprised. He hadn't expected it. The boys immediately started complaining, jealous that Young had been picked. Ajin watched quietly. She was impressed. Choi seemed to be improving in how she dealt with people. But Choi had a different plan. She hadn't picked Young to be nice. She wanted to make Junwoo jealous. but he didn't react. Choi, however, convinced herself that his blank face meant he was extremely jealous, but trying not to show it. To take it a step further, she added that Young-min was very cute. Poor Young-min, completely unaware, was thrilled. He thought things were going great. Next, they spun the bottle again. This time, it landed on Ajin and Junwoo. Jung-min asked them a question. "Are you interested in anyone in this room?" Everyone leaned in, curious. Ajin and Junwoo both looked at each other. They didn't say anything. They just stared for a moment, thinking the same thing, but not saying it out loud. Then they quickly looked away. Ajin was thinking that maybe she wasn't actually bothered. Junwoo hadn't come to tease her. He came to apologize. And Junwoo was thinking that maybe she didn't hate him after all. The rest of the group started whispering. They found it strange that neither of them answered. Why did they look at each other like that? What were they thinking? No one knew, but everyone could feel the tension. And the question still hadn't been answered. Since Ajin and Junwoo took too long to answer the question, they were told to draw punishment slips. Ajin picked one that said she had to take a photo of the professor's room door. Junwoo picked a slip that said he didn't have to do anything. But since neither of them had answered, the group decided both of them had to do Ajin's challenge. Their friends warned them. If they got caught, they shouldn't mention the game. And they shouldn't come back to the room either. Ajin looked uneasy. She wasn't comfortable being alone with Junwoo. Her friends tried to encourage her. Choi offered to go in her place, but Young-min quickly stopped her. He said that wasn't allowed. Everyone agreed to stay quiet and get back inside before anyone got caught. Ajin said goodbye and left with Junwoo. Choi stayed behind, irritated that she couldn't take Ajin's spot. Some of the students in the room started commenting that Ajin looked prettier without her glasses. Choi couldn't believe it. She stood right there, yet no one seemed to notice her. She wondered if everyone had gone blind. Wanting attention, she grabbed someone's hand and dragged them back inside to keep the game going. Meanwhile, Ajin and Junwoo were on their way to the professor's room. Junwoo was deep in thought. He wanted to use the moment alone to apologize for what happened on the train. He pointed out a lit window across the way. It was probably the professor's room. He said it would be faster to take the shortcut through the garden. But Ajin barely heard him. She just wanted to leave. She felt cold, uncomfortable, and anxious. She said they should go down and take the garden path. Just as she turned to move, Junwoo called her. He began talking, trying to bring up what had happened earlier. But before he could finish, a hall monitor appeared. They heard the voice call out, asking who was there. Without thinking, Junwoo grabbed Ajin's hand. They ran. Quickly, they slipped into a nearby room and hid behind a wall. The monitor looked around, saw the open window, and closed it before walking away. The two of them stayed still, barely breathing, afraid of being caught. But they kept holding hands. Junwoo was the first to speak. He quietly asked if she thought the professor had already left. That's when Ajin noticed their hands. She quickly pulled hers away. The awkward silence returned, and Junwoo apologized. But the monitor heard them talking and came back to check. Ajin started to panic. If they were caught, they could lose points. Junwoo stood up and told her to stay hidden. She asked what he planned to do, but before he could answer, the door started to open. He opened it first and walked out, pretending to be on the phone. The hall monitor paused. But when he saw it was Junwoo, he relaxed. Junwoo was the top student at the school. The monitor smiled, thinking it had just been some troublemakers. He asked Junwoo what he was doing there. Junwoo apologized and said he knew he wasn't supposed to be out late. He explained he had been talking on the phone. The monitor told him it was fine. Ajin, still hiding, watched the whole thing. She noticed how different the tone was with Junwoo. How respectful the monitor was. Even so, Junwoo would still get a small penalty point for being out late. The monitor asked if he had seen anyone else around. Junwoo calmly said no. He nudged the door closed with his foot, blocking the view into the room where Ajin was hiding. Ajin realized what he was doing. He was protecting her. If they got caught together, rumors would definitely spread. Even so, she felt guilty. He was getting a penalty because of her. And she knew, for someone like him, grades mattered a lot. The monitor finally left, reminding him to head back to his room soon. When the coast was clear, Junwoo told her it was safe to come out. Ajin stepped out slowly, looking guilty. He asked if she was okay. She said she wasn't scared. There was nothing wrong with her expression. She just felt bad that he got penalized because of her. He told her not to worry about it. Then he said they should finish what they started and take a photo of the professor's door. Ajin was surprised. She had assumed he would give up on the task after getting a penalty. Ajin suggested that maybe they should just go back to the room. But Junwoo smirked and asked if she was too scared to finish the mission. She looked irritated and replied that she wasn't scared. She was just worried about him. That made him laugh. She didn't understand why. She asked if he thought she was funny. She told him he was always teasing her, and if he didn't like her, it would be easier to just ignore her. The tension returned. He didn't say anything right away. She waited, confused by his silence. Then, without warning, he gently placed his hand on her head. He told her that even if he joked around, he would never mistreat her. He said he didn't hate her. That was the reason he had come all the way out there. He turned and started walking ahead. He told her to hurry up, or they might get caught again. Ajin stood there for a second, taking in his words. Maybe something was finally changing between them. She followed closely behind him as they made their way to the teacher's office. Her steps were quiet, her body trembling in the cold. When he turned back, he caught sight of her shivering. Without hesitation, he slipped off his jacket and placed it gently over her shoulders. The warmth steadied her, and though her heart still raced, she found herself a little more at ease. Yet doubts clouded her mind. She couldn't believe his small act of kindness, brushing it off as a prank. Her flustered reaction broke through in frustration, but instead of taking offense, Park Junwoo only laughed. To him, her outburst looked strangely amusing. With a playful smirk, he turned and walked ahead, his laughter echoing softly as she trailed after him, still caught between anger and confusion. They arrived at the teacher's office and quickly snapped a picture, proof of the door's number to show the others waiting inside. But when they returned, all eyes shifted toward Ajin, still wrapped in Junwoo's jacket. Whispers began to spread, teasing comments sparking louder than she could bear. She explained hurriedly that he had only lent it to her because of the cold, but no one seemed to believe her. The noise grew heavy, filling the room with restless chatter until Junwoo himself could no longer stand it. He slipped away quietly, leaving behind the chaos. They pleaded for him to stay, but his decision was firm. One by one, the group began wishing each other goodnight. Yet, in one corner of the room, a quiet sorrow lingered. Cho-hee sat alone, sulking, her heart heavy with disappointment. She had longed for just a moment to speak with him, but he was gone too soon. That night, Junwoo lay restless, unable to surrender to sleep. His thoughts circled endlessly, drawn again and again to the same person, Kang Ajin. The image of her without her glasses played over in his mind, her face softer, her presence strangely endearing. He caught himself, uneasy with the thought. Cute? He shouldn't think of her that way. And yet, no matter how he tried, his mind would not let her go. Eventually, he drifted into sleep, his mind still restless from the thoughts that had kept him awake. In his dream, it felt as though he was back at school again. And there she was, Kang Ajin. She stood trying to fix her hair, fumbling as she searched for her headband, unaware that it was already in her hand. The sight made him smile. He went closer to her and showed her the headband on her wrist. She was grateful, but he made a remark that made her feel he was teasing her. She started to shout at him, but before he could do anything else, the dream began to fade. The scene slipped away, and soon he found himself back in his room. It had only been a dream, shaped by the thoughts that had followed him into his sleep. He told himself not to think of her again, but no matter how he tried, her presence lingered. The next morning, the teacher returned with a new pair of lenses for Ajin so she could use them during the school trip. At the same time, Choi Jung-min was scolded for his actions. He felt bad and offered his apology, though Ajin wasn't too upset. In truth, she had always wanted to change her lenses. Though the situation had been rough, it almost felt as if he had helped her in an unintended way. Later, Ajin held Junwoo's jacket in her hands. She gave it to Jung-min, asking him to return it. But as Jung-min looked around, he spotted Junwoo running an errand. He called Ajin back and placed the jacket in her hands again, insisting that she should give it to Junwoo herself. Reluctantly, she accepted and went after him. When she caught up to him, Junwoo stopped and turned, but her eyes dropped to his shoes instead. His shoelace had come undone. Without a word, she bent down and tied it neatly. Junwoo shifted, clearly uncomfortable with the gesture, but Ajin didn't stop. She did it quietly, as if it were the most natural thing to do. His friend standing nearby could only watch the small act and was struck by it. To see her take the time to do something so simple, yet so thoughtful, left an impression. It was in these little moments that Ajin's kindness showed the most. After tying his shoelace, Ajin carefully placed Junwoo's jacket on top of the box he was carrying before running off. Though his friend made a casual remark about her looking cute, Junwoo quickly dismissed it outwardly. Deep down, however, he knew the truth. She was cute. But it was a thought he would never admit, not even to himself fully, and certainly not to anyone else. Back at the field, Cho-hee sent a message for Ajin to come over. Her chest tightened with jealousy as she noticed groups of students happily taking pictures together. Then, her phone rang. It was a wealthy man she had met a few weeks earlier. She disliked speaking to him, but there were things she wanted that only he could provide. With practiced ease, she feigned interest and told him about an expensive handbag she wished to own, claiming her wealthy friend had just bought one. Amused, he agreed to buy it for her. A smile spread across her face as she hung up, immediately browsing online for designer bags. Her distraction was interrupted by another notification. The delinquent she had run into the day before had sent her a message. Irritation stirred, and she began crafting a sharp, dismissive reply. But before she could send it, a loud commotion echoed from the front of the field. Curious, she stood and made her way forward, where a crowd had already gathered. Among the chaos, she saw that one of Ajin's classmates had fallen. He had been tripped deliberately, the handiwork of Jandi, the notorious class bully. At once, Ajin rushed in, helping the boy to his feet, her movements quick and full of concern. To Cho-hee, it felt unnecessary, nosy even, and she was ready to turn away in irritation. But then she noticed Junwoo. He stood close by, his attention locked on the scene unfolding before them. Hoping to draw his eyes, Cho-hee tried to appear vulnerable, pitiful even. Yet her efforts went unnoticed. Junwoo's gaze never wavered, his focus entirely fixed on one person, and it wasn't her. It was Ajin. The realization cut deep, filling Cho-hee with a quiet, bitter jealousy. Cho-hee's heart tightened with jealousy. The sight of Junwoo's eyes fixed on Ajin gnawed at her, and she couldn't let it go. She pulled Ajin aside, leading her to a quieter corner away from the crowd. In her mind, there had to be a reason. Something that happened during the mission that made him look at Ajin in such a way. With a carefully crafted smile, Cho-hee pressed for answers. Ajin, however, only recalled a simple moment, explaining that nothing special had happened aside from Junwoo lending her his jacket, which she had already returned. Cho-hee studied her closely, suspicion flickering in her eyes. She couldn't bring herself to believe it, convinced there was more than Ajin was willing to admit. She silently vowed to uncover the truth, no matter what. Meanwhile, Ajin's innocent heart misread the situation. Believing Cho-hee's sudden intensity meant something was wrong with her, she sighed in quiet relief, certain it wasn't anything more. As they walked back together, Cho-hee's phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen, someone checking in on her. She responded quickly, arranging a hangout later. The small smile that curved her lips afterward hinted at something more. a plan quietly forming in her mind. That evening, all the students gathered as their teacher made an announcement. The atmosphere was calm until Cho-hee suddenly slipped over to Ajin, whispering in urgency. With a lowered voice, she explained that she needed help. She claimed she couldn't go to the convenience store herself, that her clothes were stained, and she needed Ajin to buy sanitary pads for her. Without hesitation, Ajin rose to her feet and hurried off, unaware of the eyes watching her leave. Junwoo had noticed. From where he sat, his gaze followed her figure as she disappeared into the night. Concern tugged at him. It wasn't safe for her to wander out alone. Outside, Ajin searched for the convenience store, her steps uncertain in the dark. She didn't realize she wasn't alone, that someone had begun trailing her. When at last she found the store and turned into the corner that led to it, a figure stepped in her path. His voice was casual, but his stance blocked the way. He claimed to know her as Cho-hee's friend. Ajin tried to move past, but before she could, another hand tapped her shoulder from behind. She turned quickly, only to see two more figures standing there. A chill ran through her as fear crept in. She recognized them immediately. They were the same delinquents she had seen speaking with Cho-hee the other day. Their expressions left no doubt about their intentions. They told her she had offended them, and now she would have to pay the price. The boy in front of Ajin placed his hand on her shoulder, preparing to drag her away for a so-called chat. Before he could take a step, a sharp interruption cut through the moment. It was Park Junwoo. With practiced strength, he gripped the boy's wrist and twisted it until a harsh crack filled the air. The sound startled the others, and one of his friends rushed forward in retaliation. But Junwoo met the attack effortlessly, a single kick sending the boy crashing down. The ease of his movements left everyone stunned. Even Ajin stood frozen, unable to look away. Junwoo's eyes found hers, his gaze steady for a brief moment. But danger still lingered. From behind, another figure lunged, striking out while Junwoo was distracted. The words that followed were sharp, invoking Cho-hee's name and catching him completely off guard. That pause was enough. The blow landed hard, sending pain rushing through him. Ajin's chest tightened with fear. She wasn't strong enough to fight back, and panic clouded her thoughts. All she could do was stand there, trembling, unsure of what to do next. Back on the field, the atmosphere was strikingly different. Students gathered beneath the night sky, candles glowing warmly in their hands. Their laughter and chatter filled the air, light and carefree. But Cho-hee could not share their ease. Her phone calls to Ajin went unanswered, her worry deepening with every failed attempt. She had only asked them to scare her, nothing more. She wanted to unsettle Ajin. But as unease spread through her, doubt began to creep in. If things had gone too far, there would be consequences. And if the truth surfaced, the one to bear the weight of it all would be her. The next day at school, the cafeteria was filled with hushed whispers as news spread quickly among the students. Park Junwoo was in the hospital after being ambushed on his way to the convenience store. Rumors exaggerated the incident, claiming it had been a 17-on-1 fight. The sheer number made Ajin choke on her food in shock. Though the story was blown out of proportion, the weight of worry pressed heavily on her chest. Even the general atmosphere of the cafeteria was uneasy, with most of the students appearing agitated. Ajin's appetite disappeared almost entirely. A heavy sense of guilt gnawed at her, convincing her that she was somehow responsible for what had happened to Junwoo. Unable to continue eating, she left her tray and went to dispose of her plate. Even her teacher had noticed her lack of food intake and urged her gently to eat more, but Ajin's mind was far away from meals. Her thoughts lingered solely on Junwoo, though she kept her true concern to herself. Just as she turned after dropping her plate, Jungmin appeared. He had been looking for Cho-hee, intending to have a meal with her. Yet, even amidst the growing chaos, Cho-hee had been nowhere to be seen. When Ajin, still unsettled, shifted the conversation to Junwoo, the seriousness etched on her face drew Jungmin's mischievous side. Wanting to tease her, he deliberately spoke in a way that unsettled her more, suggesting vaguely that Junwoo's arm had been badly injured and that the police could not identify the attackers because of the darkness of the night. The weight of those words made Ajin's expression crumble further. She sank deeper into guilt and sadness, imagining Junwoo's pain and believing once again that it was her fault. Her reaction nearly made Jungmin burst into laughter, but he restrained himself. To laugh openly would have drawn suspicion, so he hid it behind a composed face. Yet, Ajin caught a flicker of amusement in his expression. Puzzled and anxious, she tried to decipher it, but Jungmin only leaned closer to her, whispering that it was a secret. The cryptic remark worsened her unease, pressing her emotions to the brink. She looked as though she might break into tears at any moment. Feeling suffocated, Ajin left the cafeteria and wandered into the school field, where she called out for Chohee. Chohee came running, though not out of concern for Ajin, but rather for her own hidden reasons. Ajin, exhausted and dejected, sank down and poured out everything that had happened the previous night. As Chohee listened, she feigned anger and asked whether the incident had been reported to the police. Ajin recounted that the authorities could not identify the culprits due to the darkness. That revelation drew a small, satisfied smile from Chohee. Inwardly, she was relieved. The shadows of the night had concealed her involvement, leaving no trail that could lead back to her. Ajin couldn't see the smile on Chohee's face as she lay on her shoulder, pouring out her heart. That smile never left Chohee's lips, even as Ajin spoke of her worries. To Ajin, it was a moment of sorrow, but to Chohee, it was quiet satisfaction. Junwoo would probably hate Ajin now, and the thought only deepened Chohee's delight. She had long wished to drive a wedge between them, yet fate had made Ajin do it herself. Ajin lamented endlessly, her voice trembling with regret. She asked what she should do, drowning in guilt, never realizing that the one she trusted most was savoring her pain. Chohee feigned concern, but dismissed Ajin's hope of apologizing, whispering that nothing would change, that Junwoo would only blame her. The words sank deep and Ajin's sadness grew heavier. She blamed herself over and over, lost in despair, until Chohee began to wonder why her friend was so shaken over Junwoo. Then, as though a memory struck her, Ajin suddenly stood. She was ready to leave, but Jungmin's words from the cafeteria came rushing back. Without hesitation, she confessed what she had heard. Junwoo would never be able to use his arm again. The truth escaped her lips in a rush, and before Chohee could react, Ajin ran off. Her steps carried her to the convenience store, the weight of guilt pressing harder with every breath. She bought milk, her thoughts consumed by Junwoo. If he was suffering because of her, then she had to do something. Anything. She clutched the milk tightly, ready to go to him. But just as she turned to leave, fate intervened. Junwoo walked in. Her heart jolted. She turned away instinctively, hoping to escape unseen. But his eyes found her, and recognition struck. She froze as the air shifted. Awkwardness clung to her as he drew closer, as if the distance between them vanished in an instant. Without a word, he led her to a seat inside the convenience store. And just like that, the moment she dreaded was here. Now, they stood facing each other in silence. She handed him the milk, and his heart lifted at the small gesture. As he tried to open it with his injured left hand, she quickly took it back and opened it for him. Her eyes lingered on his face, filled with quiet worry. He noticed the concern etched in her expression, and though he tried to brush it off with a playful thought, the truth weighed heavily between them. She wanted to apologize, but the words never left her lips. Fear held them back. Instead, she admitted she had learned about his arm from Youngmin. When he asked what she knew, she told him everything. Since his friend had already spoken, he decided to play along. He claimed his injury was so severe he could not even lift a straw. The moment those words reached her, her body trembled, her heart tightening with fear. Realizing he had taken the joke too far, he was about to soften his words, until she said something that stunned him completely. With trembling resolve, she declared that she would take responsibility for him for the rest of her life. The weight of those words struck him, catching him entirely off guard. He wasn't expecting her to say something like that. Even the silence around them seemed to reject her words. He couldn't believe she had actually taken him seriously when he claimed he couldn't even lift a straw. Nervous and flustered, she lowered her head and continued, insisting that she would help him with rehabilitation since she heard about his condition from Youngmin. Only then did he realize why she had been acting so strangely, and he couldn't help but wonder what exactly Jungmin had told her. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm, then quickly pulled back, apologizing as though she had done something wrong. Still, she promised that he should focus only on his recovery, and that she would be the one to take care of him. Her words triggered a memory in his mind. Flashes of the previous night, when she had tried so desperately to protect him. Suddenly, she broke down. Tears welled in her eyes, and before long, she was crying openly in front of him. He was left puzzled and heavy-hearted. He regretted not telling her right away that he was fine. Now her sobs were loud enough to draw the attention of those nearby, and all he could do was try his best to console her. The school trip was already coming to an end. The students had arrived at their final destination, and the teacher reminded them about their assignment: to submit at least 10 photos. Almost immediately, everyone got to work, snapping pictures with friends and scenery. Junwoo, too, tried to take a photo, but with his injured arm, it was nearly impossible. Before long, several girls crowded around him, eager to help. Their attention only suffocated him more. He rejected their offers, looking for a way to escape. Then, his eyes caught sight of Ajin watching him quietly from a distance. She looked nervous, almost frozen, but it was clear. She was keeping the promise she had made to care for him. Junwoo quickly made up his mind. He announced that he was heading to the bathroom and walked off, hoping she wouldn't follow. On his way, he came across Youngmin. Without warning, Junwoo tapped him on the shoulder, startling him so badly that he nearly jumped out of his skin. Junwoo questioned him about what he had told Ajin. Jungmin, brushing it off, explained himself like it was nothing serious. Junwoo insisted that he should tell Ajin the truth, but Jungmin simply shook his head. In his mind, Junwoo was the one who needed to say it. With a sigh, Junwoo scratched the back of his head and told him everything that had really happened at the convenience store. Now Jungmin understood. But as he watched Junwoo fumble over the subject, acting so out of character, he couldn't help but smirk. It was strange. Junwoo had never behaved this way with anyone else. Then it clicked. Junwoo liked Ajin. Smiling to himself, Jungmin shrugged it off. He said he didn't have the time to deal with it and walked away, leaving Junwoo to handle it on his own. Junwoo let out a tired sigh. This was going to be more stressful than he had thought. The school trip had finally come to an end. The train station buzzed with restless students as they carried their luggage and settled into their seats. Junwoo stood in the middle of the commotion, staring at his own heavy bag, wondering how he would manage to lift it onto the rack. Before he could figure it out, Ajin appeared behind him and, with a lighthearted ease, helped him with the luggage. Junwoo immediately regretted not bringing a smaller one, but there was no turning back now. As the students shuffled around to find their places, Ajin chose the seat beside him. She explained it was because Jungmin had asked her to switch, wanting to sit with Chohee. The thought unsettled Junwoo, not because Ajin was now next to him, but because Jungmin still clung to foolishness, chasing after Chohee even after being rejected. The train doors closed with a sharp hiss, and soon the rhythmic motion carried them away from the station. The noise of chatter died down, replaced by the steady hum of wheels on the track. Junwoo sat silently, rehearsing the words he wanted to say. He had promised himself that during this ride, he would finally reveal the truth about his arm. But just as he gathered the courage, he felt a sudden weight on his shoulder. Turning slightly, he saw Ajin fast asleep, her head resting gently against him. The sight caught him off guard. She had promised earlier that she would watch over him, yet here she was, dozing off before he even spoke. Her head tilted to the side, but Junwoo instinctively steadied her, making sure she rested comfortably. Then her lips began to move faintly, as though she were speaking through a dream. It almost looked as if she were eating in her sleep, but then the words slipped out. Soft, barely audible, yet unmistakable. Even in her dreams, she spoke of taking responsibility for him. A strange warmth stirred within Junwoo's chest. She wasn't even conscious, yet she still thought of him. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe her words, that she truly meant them. He could only hope that when she awoke, she would not take them back. It was Monday. The students filled the classroom, their voices overlapping in random chatter. Then, the teacher walked in. Instantly, the room fell into silence, each student sitting up straighter as order returned. She announced that changing seats would be good for a fresh start. Everyone was asked to pick a slip of paper, each carrying a pair of names. Whoever matched would become seatmates. Ajin unfolded hers, the name written, Elsa. Just then, a voice rang out behind her, calling out his partner, Park Junwoo. Soon, everyone settled into their new places. The math teacher entered and the lesson began. Ajin leaned forward, taking notes with unusual focus. Junwoo noticed. She never took math this seriously. She told him she was writing for his sake, so he wouldn't miss out on notes. Junwoo thought it unnecessary, but she kept going. Her effort made him smile, quietly to himself. When the teacher left, Ajin dropped her head on the desk, drained. Math class was usually her chance to nap. But this time, she hadn't. And now she was starving. Junwoo called to her, asking if she could buy him something from the cafeteria. She was exhausted, but she had promised to take care of him. So she went, and returned almost right away. He looked at the milk she brought and shook his head. The wrong one. She stood ready to go back and exchange it, but he stopped her, told her to eat it instead. Junwoo couldn't eat bread without milk. From the desk in front, Jongmin spoke up. He'd heard Junwoo clearly say, banana milk. Junwoo brushed him off, telling him to focus on his science notes. That's when Ajin thought it over. Maybe he had done it on purpose. Maybe he had asked for the wrong milk so she would have it. Her stomach growled. She accepted it gratefully, eating at last. After the meal, Ajin decided to help Junwoo with his notes. He leaned back with that familiar, teasing smile, pointing out that her handwriting wasn't good enough. His book was even folded at the edges, and he asked her to arrange it properly. That was when Ajin realized his true intention behind offering her the meal. It wasn't kindness at all. He had planned this from the start. A little blackmail. The next teacher came in, beginning a lesson on stars. The classroom quickly sank into silence, but the silence was heavy. The subject was too dull for most of them, and one by one, students began to drift off. Ajin's eyes slowly closed as well. Junwoo, on the other hand, noticed her head drooping. Without a word, he closed the book in front of her and simply watched her as the lesson went on, his expression unreadable. Finally, the bell for mealtime rang. The teacher left, and the students burst out of the classroom like a flood of energy. In the girls' toilet, Cho-hee stood with her phone, typing messages to Ajin. But her notifications kept lighting up with interruptions. This time, it was from the wealthy guy who had called her during the school trip. He called again, reminding her about the bag he had promised to buy her. The reminder made her mood shift instantly. Hope flickered in her eyes as she spoke to him with a sweeter tone, pretending to like him more than she really did. The call ended, and at that moment, Ajin's reply finally came in. Ajin told her she wouldn't be able to have lunch together. Cho-hee's expression hardened. Frustration welled inside her. She needed answers about Junwoo, especially what happened after the school trip. She stormed out of the toilet, her thoughts circling. But then, Junwoo's voice caught her ears. She turned sharply and froze. There was Ajin, walking beside him, carrying his tray toward the cafeteria. They were talking casually, as if it was nothing unusual. Annoyance twisted into anger. Two boys rushed past her, one bumping into her shoulder hard. She barely noticed. Her eyes remained fixed on the pair walking away. Ajin had gone against her again. She had clearly told her not to get involved with Junwoo, but Ajin never listened. And now, Cho-hee's anger burned hotter than ever. At the cafeteria, Ajin picked up a tray for herself and another for Junwoo, balancing both as she joined the meal line. The server smiled warmly and commended her for being such a thoughtful friend, which made her cheeks flush red. Because of this, the server ended up serving her a generous portion of food. When they sat down to eat, Ajin avoided Junwoo's gaze and began eating quickly. Junwoo's lips curled into a small smile. He felt genuinely relieved and glad to see her eating well. Between bites, he told her that he would be heading somewhere after their meal. To her surprise, he led her to the library. Giving him a little space, she wandered a few steps behind. Suddenly, he called out to her in a clear voice. The students nearby turned their heads in shock. It wasn't common to see Junwoo openly calling out to a female student. She walked over to him, and he handed her a book, recommending she read it for their earth science class. Gratitude and curiosity welled up in her chest. Did he come to the library just for her? Before she could linger too much on the thought, he began explaining how she should approach the book, his voice calm and steady. He moved off to search for another book while Ajin stood frozen, holding the one he had given her, reading its title in awe. Time slipped by faster than she realized. Suddenly aware of how short their break was, she hurried around the library searching for him. She finally spotted him struggling to pull a book from a shelf. Determined to keep her promise of helping him, she rushed over and reached out in front of him, tugging the book loose bit by bit. But the moment she stood there, so close, Junwoo froze. The faint scent of her hair drifted toward him, unexpectedly warm and inviting. His hand hesitated before reaching past her for the book. That was when Ajin realized just how little space was between them. Her heartbeat quickened. The silence between them was broken by the sharp ring of the lunch bell. At the exact same moment, her phone vibrated. Her mother's urgent voice came through the line. Grandma had fallen ill, and she would not be able to take Ajin to the dentist tomorrow. Ajin sighed softly but quickly told her mother not to worry, and to go see Grandma instead. While she was still speaking, Junwoo began walking out of the library without a word. Hastily ending the call, she ran after him, calling his name. For the rest of that day, Ajin made sure to stay by Junwoo's side, quietly helping him however she could. The next day, which happened to be a weekend, Ajin was at the hospital, ready as ever to finally get rid of her braces. No wonder she hardly smiled. She had already promised herself that she would buy a chocolate cake on her way home. The dentist called her in and began working on her teeth, assuring her that it wouldn't hurt much. But Ajin wasn't concerned about the pain. She only wanted the braces out. Before long, the doctor was done, and her teeth looked as good as new. While she was speaking with the nurse at the reception, someone walked in demanding to see his dad. The voice sounded familiar. Ajin turned, and her eyes widened when she saw Junwoo. They both froze for a moment, surprised to find each other there. Junwoo's gaze lingered. He noticed she looked a little different. Just then, his father came out and spotted them talking. Curious, he asked, and quickly realized they both attended the same school. With a bright smile, his father asked Ajin how Junwoo was at school, since Junwoo rarely spoke about it at home. Ajin, nervous but honest, replied that he was popular, especially among the girls. She was about to say more when Junwoo quickly pulled her away. Watching the scene, his father and the nurse exchanged knowing smiles. Amused, his father even decided to offer Ajin's next treatment for free, since she seemed so close to his son. As they reached the elevator, Junwoo turned to her and asked what she was doing at the hospital. Ajin explained that she had been visiting for the past 3 years, and now she clearly saw the resemblance between him and his dad. Beaming, she asked if he noticed anything different about her expression. Junwoo did notice, but he denied it, shaking his head. Her smile faltered and she turned to leave, a little disappointed. But Junwoo called out to her. Scratching his head awkwardly, he avoided her gaze. Since it was evening, he asked if she would have dinner with him, at least to celebrate her new look. Besides, he had something he wanted to tell her. Ajin blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't expected him to ask her out to dinner. She agreed, and Junwoo took her to a restaurant. He told her to order anything she wanted, but she chose just curry. He was a little annoyed. There were so many expensive dishes on the menu. But at the same time, he was happy when Ajin explained that she couldn't eat curry because of her braces. Just then, the server brought a tray of pork cutlet to their table. The meal was free since they were being filmed live. Ajin didn't mind at all. She looked at the pork cutlet with such joy that Junwoo couldn't help but notice. Seeing her smile so brightly left him confused. He had never seen her like that before. After eating for a while, Ajin asked him when he would get his cast removed. Junwoo thought maybe she was tired of taking care of him, but she explained that she also wanted to celebrate him, just like he had done for her. That eased him, and he quietly took a sip of water. She noticed he wasn't eating the pork cutlet and asked why. Their conversation carried on like that, but he still didn't touch the dish. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Choi Jung-min and his friend ran into a mall to escape the heavy rain. Just as they were about to move forward, they noticed someone ahead. Cho-hee, walking with an older man. They were laughing together, and the man even put his arm around her. What Jung-min and his friend couldn't see was the look of discomfort on her face. Jung-min, feeling jealous, thought the man was her boyfriend. His friend encouraged him to go ask her directly, so he did. When Cho-hee saw them, she froze. She didn't want to be seen as dating an older man, especially because of Junwoo. She couldn't let him find out. So when they asked, she quickly said the man was her cousin. The man looked surprised at her answer, but Young-min seemed relieved. He and his friend greeted the man politely. Then Young-min asked Cho-hee to hang out with them. Realizing they might ruin her plans, Cho-hee quickly pulled them aside to talk. The man, however, didn't take her behavior lightly. He wasn't the type to let things go easily. Cho-hee guided them toward the elevator, quickly fabricating a story that her cousin had just returned from Korea and that they had much to catch up on. When suspicion rose again, she denied it more firmly, insisting on her tale until they finally accepted it. She urged them to go ahead and watch the movie without her and bid them farewell. Only when the doors to the elevator had closed did she allow herself to breathe, her chest rising with quiet relief. She had narrowly avoided being caught. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, their meal had come to an end. Or rather, hers had, as Junwoo barely touched it. They rose and stepped outside, only to be met by the heavy curtain of rain pouring down over the streets. He suggested they take a taxi, but she refused, unwilling to let him spend more money on her after already treating her to a meal. With determined steps, she moved toward the bus gate on her own. But before she could go further, he stopped her and asked her to help him remove the jacket he was wearing. Confused, she complied, wondering at his intention. Then, in a sudden gesture, he draped the jacket over both their heads, shielding her as he pulled her close. Without hesitation, he ran with her through the rain, his frame taking the brunt of the rain so she would remain as dry as possible. The moment felt unreal to her. He was there beside her, soaked and shivering, yet his concern was only for her comfort. Each stride pressed the truth deeper into her chest, that someone was willing to face the downpour simply to ease her burden. They finally reached the bus station. She wanted to thank him, but the words stalled on her lips, tangled in an unfamiliar embarrassment. The bus arrived and she prepared to leave, torn between the desire to go and the wish to stay. Sensing her hesitation, he quietly chose to accompany her. He didn't wait for her to respond. He simply followed her into the bus, and soon it pulled away from the stop. The passengers around them spoke in low voices, but the two of them stayed quiet, lost in their own thoughts. After a moment, Ajin decided to break the silence. She asked if the bus really led to his house. He said no. The answer surprised her, and a small thought crept in. Had he entered the bus just because of her? The idea left her unsure of what to say next, and the silence between them grew even heavier than before. When her stop drew near, she pointed out her house to him through the window. The bus came to a halt, and they both exchanged quiet farewells. Junwoo, however, seemed weighed down by their parting, as though it left a small ache behind. As they walked away in opposite directions, their minds lingered on unspoken thoughts. Meanwhile, back at the mall, Cho-hee was chasing after her so-called rich appa. He strode angrily toward his car, but she clung to him, asking why he had suddenly left her in the middle of shopping. He shook off her hand, his voice sharp as he reminded her of what she had just done. calling him her cousin in front of her friends. To him, it felt like humiliation, like she was ashamed of him. He ordered her to get into the car. Cho-hee hesitated, her suspicion growing. Perhaps he wasn't as wealthy as he liked to appear. With a bitter tone, she told him she wanted to end things, admitting she had been thinking about it for some time. But he refused, saying he wouldn't accept her decision. Then, almost too calmly, he revealed a photo on his phone. Cho-hee's eyes froze on the screen. Whatever was there, he had prepared for this moment, knowing what she might do. Now it seemed the proud and confident Cho-hee had been cornered. Could it be that she, of all people, was being blackmailed? A few weeks later, Ajin and Junwoo were seen having a casual conversation. They had clearly grown closer, their words flowing more easily than before. Both were drinking banana milk, though it wasn't Junwoo's favorite. Ajin asked him what he thought of it, and when he smiled and complimented the taste, her excitement shot through the roof. Her eyes lit up like a child's, and Junwoo couldn't help but stare at her for a moment. Then, almost casually, he told her to come with him to the hospital when he needed to change his cast, reminding her that it also meant buying him a meal afterward. Without much thought, Ajin agreed. To her, it wasn't a big deal, but Junwoo noticed how naturally she said yes. Meanwhile, in a quieter place, Cho-hee was mopping the floor, her face pale and her shoulders heavy with defeat. The boy she was supposed to break up with had turned things against her, trapping her in a corner she couldn't escape. Now she was forced to obey him. Her mind replayed the scene from that night, the night he showed her the picture of her father with another woman. The shame, the anger, it was unbearable. She wanted to tear both of them apart for ruining her life. Desperately, she had begged him not to tell anyone about her father's secret. This wasn't the life she wanted. Her chest ached as she recalled Junwoo carefully bandaging her injured hand that day. That was what she longed for. Gentleness, not the situation she found herself in. The next day at school, the usual chatter filled the air. A few students crowded around a phone, laughing at a show, when one of them shoved another, causing the phone to slip from his hands and hit the ground. The screen lit up with a picture that drew quick attention. Ajin and Junwoo sitting together. Cho-hee, who happened to pass by, froze when her eyes caught the image. Her chest tightened. They looked close. Too close. A storm of jealousy and rage boiled inside her. She clenched her fists so tightly that her hands shook, her nails digging into her palms. Ajin never listened to her, always doing whatever pleased her. And now, maybe Ajin was planning to leave her behind completely. The thought was unbearable. One of the boys tried to strike up a conversation with her, drawn in by her beauty. But Cho-hee didn't even notice him. Her whole focus was locked on that phone. Her face was pale, her eyes burning. She returned the phone silently, her movements stiff, then turned and walked away. The boys exchanged uneasy looks. Her expression wasn't just angry, it was frightening. Something about her looked deeply wrong. Her anger simmered as she walked, each step fueled by memories of Ajin, each recollection twisting her mood further. She longed to confront Ajin, to get some reassurance that she and Junwoo were truly nothing to each other. As if in answer to her thoughts, Ajin appeared suddenly from a corner, explaining in a hurry that she had to accompany Junwoo to the hospital, so following her home wouldn't work that day. That only made Cho-hee's frustration boil higher. Before Ajin could ask what was wrong, an older woman appeared, asking for help carrying some supplies to the art room. Both girls complied, moving the items together, and once inside, Ajin suggested they rest briefly before leaving. But Cho-hee had other plans. Feeling unwell, or at least pretending to, she told Ajin she would head home first. Ajin said goodbye, reminding her to take care. Once Cho-hee stepped outside, she executed her own scheme. With a swift motion, she locked the door behind her, trapping Ajin inside and preventing her from leaving at will. The quiet click of the lock echoed ominously, leaving Ajin unaware of what Cho-hee had just done. Ajin was finally done arranging the room. Every book, every piece of paper, every chair had been set in its proper place, and she stood for a moment, taking in the sight. A quiet sense of accomplishment washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by an uncomfortable chill that made her body shiver. The air felt strangely heavy, colder than before, and soon her breath turned uneven. She began to cough, her chest tightening as though something invisible pressed down on her lungs. She reached for the door, hoping to step outside for air, but when she tried to open it, the handle refused to turn. Confusion struck first, followed by a slow wave of dread. She pulled harder, rattling it again and again, but it wouldn't budge. Her coughing paused for a moment, shock overtaking her body. A thought quickly formed in her mind. Maybe the security guards had not realized she was still inside. Perhaps they had locked the door without checking. That had to be it. Still, the silence that followed her thoughts made the room feel colder. Ajin's mind drifted to Junwoo. He must have been waiting by now, expecting her to keep her word. The promise they had made lingered in her heart like a weight. She hated breaking promises, especially to him. Each second trapped in the room made her chest heavier, and the thought of him waiting in confusion filled her with unease. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Junwoo was busy planning ahead. His fingers brushed across his phone screen as he searched for places they could go after the hospital. A part of him wanted to make the day special for her, to ease whatever pain she carried. His choice eventually settled on the cinema. Perhaps a movie would make her smile again. The thought of her laughing or leaning back in comfort eased his own worries. But time slipped by, and Ajin did not return. Junwoo glanced at the clock, then at the doorway, his patience slowly turning to concern. It was late. Too late. For a moment, he even assumed she had gone home, but the sight of her school bag beside him proved otherwise. His brows furrowed. Something wasn't right. What could possibly be keeping her? His train of thought broke when he heard footsteps approaching the classroom. Relief sparked in his chest, but when the figure entered, it was not Ajin. It was Cho-hee. She carried herself with an unusual swiftness, and before Junwoo could ask, she explained that Ajin had something urgent to do and had gone home in a rush. She even urged him to head to the hospital with her instead. Junwoo frowned. Her explanation didn't sit well with him. If Ajin had truly left, why was her bag still here? Cho-hee must have noticed his suspicion because she quickly grabbed the bag and shoved it into a locker, exhaling a shaky breath as though narrowly avoiding discovery. She added another lie, claiming Ajin had asked her to keep it for her. Junwoo wasn't convinced. Something about the whole scene felt off. He stood abruptly, his decision already made. If Ajin couldn't come, he would go to the hospital alone. But Cho-hee refused to let him. She rushed after him, her frustration boiling over. It stung her pride that he dismissed her so easily. She was Han Cho-hee, and yet he brushed her aside as if she meant nothing. The sting of rejection burned inside her chest, sharper than she expected, while Junwoo walked away with nothing but cold determination. Back at the art room, Ajin's body trembled as the cold seemed to seep into her very bones. The air around her was unnaturally icy, as though the room itself had been abandoned by warmth. Each second dragged longer than the last, and with no footsteps or voices echoing down the hallway, she realized no one was coming near the art room. The silence only worsened the sensation that she was trapped in a forgotten corner of the school. Her teeth began to chatter, and she hugged herself tightly, trying to create even the faintest comfort against the chill that surrounded her. But the harder she tried, the more unbearable it became. Unable to withstand it any longer, she forced herself toward the locker in desperation, hoping she would find a blanket, or perhaps anything soft enough to shield her from the biting air. Her hands shook as she pulled it open and searched frantically, but the shelves were empty, offering nothing to soothe her. Disappointment settled heavily in her chest, but then her eyes landed on something that made her pause. A plaster statue stood quietly in the corner, its blank white features frozen in place. And yet the longer she looked at it, the heavier her heart felt. A memory whispered at the edge of her mind. Stories she had overheard, ones she had always brushed aside as silly warnings. They spoke of plaster statues and their hollow, unmoving eyes. They said that anyone who stared into those empty eyes for too long would meet a mysterious, unexplainable death. As the words replayed in her head, fear prickled along her skin. Her breathing grew uneven, and she tried to look away, telling herself it was just a superstition, something children invented to scare each other. Still, the thought clung tightly to her, refusing to let go. She stepped closer, pressing a hand against the cold plaster as though the solid surface might calm her racing heart. But just as her fingers rested there, a small movement caught her attention. Her gaze darted down, and horror seized her when she realized what it was: a spider crawling across the surface. Ajin's whole body recoiled at once. She despised spiders, always had, and the sudden sight of it made her scream. The sound echoed sharply in the empty art room, breaking the stillness like glass. In panic, she stumbled back and rushed toward the door. Her fists pounded against it over and over, her pleas spilling into the quiet corridors, though she knew no one could hear her. She begged for someone, anyone, to come. The silence that answered her only deepened her dread. Her throat ached from crying out, but still, no footsteps approached. Darkness had begun to settle outside, and the shadows creeping into the room made everything worse. The art room felt less like a classroom now and more like a trap, a place where she might remain unnoticed and forgotten. Her heart twisted painfully as a memory from years ago returned with unshakable force. At coding camp, her so-called friends had locked her inside a closet, leaving her in the suffocating darkness. She had cried then too, overwhelmed by loneliness and fear, until finally someone had come. A hand had reached out and freed her, pulling her back into the light. That person had been her unexpected savior, a quiet reminder that she was not entirely alone in the world. But now, in this moment, it felt like history was repeating itself, only crueler. What if this time no one came? Tears blurred her vision as she sank against the cold door. She whispered silent prayers in her heart, desperate for an answer, for a miracle that might release her from the grip of fear. And then, just when she thought she could no longer bear the weight of loneliness, she heard it. The soft click of the door unlocking. Light spilled into the room as it opened, and she looked up in disbelief. Her breath caught when she saw him. The same person from her memory, the one who had helped her at coding camp. His presence was steady, almost unreal, as though her desperate wish had been answered exactly as she had hoped. He stepped toward her, calm and unwavering, and gently draped his jacket over her shivering frame. The warmth of it wrapped around her like an anchor, pulling her back from the edge of despair. She could only stare, shock painting her features, wondering how fate had once again brought him to her side. Even when she returned home that night, the memory replayed in her mind again and again. She could hardly believe it had truly happened, and the thought pressed heavily on her heart. It all felt too surreal, as though she had dreamed it, and at any moment she might wake up and discover it was nothing but her imagination. The next evening, Ajin and Cho-hee walked home together beneath the soft glow of the setting sun. The air was cool, and the faint sounds of traffic hummed in the distance as Ajin, still shaken yet relieved from the ordeal of the previous day, began to recount what had happened to her. She explained how she had been locked inside the art room, how the hours had stretched endlessly, and how despair had begun to weigh her down. Cho-hee listened carefully, nodding at all the right moments, but her expression was calm, almost too calm. She feigned ignorance, acting as if she had no idea what Ajin was talking about, even going so far as to ask with innocent curiosity how she had managed to escape. Ajin's tone brightened slightly as she explained that her first love had been the one to help her out. The name came softly, but it carried a heavy weight. Mr. Gwang Hyun. At the mention of the name, Cho-hee's memory stirred. She remembered vividly the time when Ajin had discovered that he already had a girlfriend, and how heartbroken she had been. Ajin had cried without ceasing, her emotions raw and unrestrained, and Cho-hee had been forced to spend days trying to console her, calming her down and putting her back into some stable frame of mind. That moment had etched itself into Cho-hee's thoughts, a reminder of how deeply Ajin's feelings for him once ran. Now, Ajin's eyes glimmered with excitement as she explained that he was no longer just a distant memory, but was now an intern at their school. She spoke about it with a spark of joy, a glow of renewed hope. The mere thought of him being nearby seemed to lift her spirits higher than they had been in weeks. This, however, did not dishearten Chohee. It thrilled her. A thought began to take shape in her mind. If Ajin's attention shifted toward her first love, then the delicate bond she had with Junwoo might weaken. This could be her chance, the perfect opportunity she had been waiting for to drive a wedge between Ajin and Junwoo for good. She smiled faintly, masking her true intentions as she encouraged Ajin. She suggested that this time she should do better with her first love, even if it meant making bold moves to win his attention. She even hinted at seduction, though she framed it in a teasing manner. Ajin, shocked by the suggestion, dismissed the idea immediately, but Chohee brushed it off with a light-hearted laugh. Inside, however, her excitement grew. This situation could turn out to be exactly what she needed. Helping Ajin win her first love would ultimately be for her own sake, as it would neatly untangle Junwoo from Ajin's side. The following day, the school buzzed with an unusual liveliness. Whispers filled the hallways, eager voices overlapping as students shared the same rumor. A new teacher had arrived, an intern who was said to be strikingly handsome. The anticipation of the students grew with every passing moment, many of them hoping that he would be assigned to their class. The atmosphere was electric, filled with curiosity and nervous excitement. Amidst all this chatter, Ajin sat at her desk, holding on to something small yet precious. In her hands rested the drink that Mr. Gwanghyun had given her the previous day. To others, it was just a simple drink, but to her, it was a treasure. She held it as if it were fragile glass, cherishing it in silence. The memory of their hands brushing against each other lingered in her thoughts, replaying over and over again in her mind. A faint blush crept onto her face, and she became completely lost in that memory. So much so that she failed to notice Junwoo calling out to her from nearby. When she finally realized his presence, she looked up to see him standing before her. He had heard from Chohee that she had been busy the previous day, and he showed her his hand as if to remind her. Ajin, thinking nothing of it, simply assumed Chohee had run into him while on her way home. She brushed the thought aside, offered him an apologetic look, and smiled brightly when he accepted it. For Junwoo, however, something about her demeanor felt different. He noticed the sparkle in her eyes, the absent-minded way she kept drifting back into her thoughts. It was unlike her usual self. He sensed that something had changed, though he could not place what it was. A quiet unease crept over him as he wished he knew a way to draw her closer to him, to take her attention away from whatever was occupying her heart. The moment of truth arrived when the homeroom teacher entered the class. The chatter subsided into silence, and every student waited eagerly. Then, the intern teacher was introduced. When he stepped through the doorway, the room seemed to shift. Kim Gwang-hyun. The name resonated in Ajin's heart, and her breath caught. The students, especially the girls, erupted with excitement, whispering to each other about his appearance and charisma. Even Ajin's usual composure slipped. Her face lit up in an unusual glow, one Junwoo had never seen directed at anyone else. Junwoo sat in silence, watching with growing discomfort. He noticed the way Ajin's eyes followed the man, the way her expression softened with admiration. When the man gave a small wave in her direction, Ajin nearly beamed. As the lecture began, she leaned forward, taking notes with a seriousness that startled him. It was rare for her to be so attentive, so eager to learn. Junwoo stared at her, the realization pressing into him slowly but firmly. Something about this man had stirred her, and it made him feel unsettled in a way he could not explain. Jealousy was there, but he did not recognize it for what it was. All he knew was that he did not like what he was seeing. The hallway buzzed with whispers as students moved into the classroom. One girl found herself wishing every day could be art class, just to catch a glimpse of the new teacher. Once class began, Mr. Kim instructed everyone to pair up and draw what they observed in their partner. The room erupted with questions, laughter, and the soft scratching of pencils, but most eyes couldn't help but stay on him. A girl even asked if she could sketch him instead. Pairs of students bent over their papers, pencils dancing across the page. Some teased their friends, others giggled quietly, but all were caught in the swirl of curiosity and concentration. Mr. Kim passed by a group where 3 students praised a boy for his sharp, detailed drawing. At another desk, Junwoo and Ajin sat facing each other, their papers slowly filling with lines, each attempting to capture the other's features. Ajin scribbled quietly, her eyes tracing Junwoo's face. For the first time, she noticed the long lashes framing his eyes, a detail that caught her completely off guard. For a few stolen moments, the noise of the class faded, leaving just the 2 of them in their quiet world of paper and pencils. Her admiration for him grew even as her pencil moved across the page. Maybe, just maybe, he really was handsome. Finally, Junwoo lifted his pencil, a faint smile curling his lips. She flinched, wondering how he could be done so quickly. Eager to see his work, she leaned forward, her curiosity bubbling. Another student drawn to the scene tried to peek as well, knowing Junwoo's reputation as one of the school's best students. Mr. Kim's eyes fell on the group, and he stepped closer, wondering what had captured their attention. The boy opposite Junwoo loudly commented on the drawing, drawing the attention of nearby students. But before anyone could react, Mr. Kim gently took the paper from Junwoo's desk. It wasn't Ajin's face at all. Junwoo had drawn an apple instead. The class erupted in laughter. Ajin's face turned red with frustration, but Mr. Kim reminded him gently that the assignment was to draw one's partner, not whatever they wanted to eat. Ajin clutched her own paper, determined that Junwoo wouldn't see it. Instead, she showed it to the surrounding students, who gasped in admiration, praising her talent and even suggesting she could be a comic artist. Her cheeks warmed and she shyly brushed off the compliments, though Mr. Kim noticed every subtle gesture. Voices spilled from the school as Junwoo called for her drawing, but Ajin held it close, shaking her head. Outside, the city skyline glowed against the night sky, tall buildings stretching into darkness. At dinner, a friend poked at the neatly arranged apple slices on Junwoo's tray. Chewing slowly, he said the apples were delicious and asked if it was the season for green apples. Junwoo explained that he loved them, which was why his mom always bought green apples. His friend asked why he liked green apples because most people preferred red. He searched for a reason to explain further, but found none. Finally, he shrugged and said there was no reason at all. He just liked them that way. That weekend, Junwoo arrived at Jungmin's house. He waited patiently as it opened. Jungmin waved at him from inside, happy that he had finally arrived. Junwoo handed over a pack of drinks, explaining how much stress he went through just to find that particular drink. Jungmin smiled confidently, saying he knew Junwoo could handle it. He ushered him in and explained that they still had 10 minutes left. On getting to the room, he revealed the perfectly prepared room for their plans. Junwoo frowned slightly, questioning if this setup wasn't too much for just a basketball game. Jungmin waved it off. Everything had to be ready. He insisted. He handed Junwoo some popcorn, saying a day like this called for treats, while balancing a drink and the remote in his other hand, grumbled about the new internet provider. As Junwoo watched, his thoughts wandered to Ajin, wondering if she knew Mr. Kim from somewhere. Junwoo absent-mindedly squeezed the popcorn, his thoughts drifting far from the room. Shaking himself out of his reverie, he asked Jungmin if he thought the trainee teacher was handsome. Jungmin paused thoughtfully before admitting that he was indeed quite handsome. Stretching to grab another piece of popcorn, he added that the teacher looked like he belonged in a coffee commercial. Junwoo frowned, recalling the teacher introduced himself the first time they met. He grabbed his drink, his mind lingering on Jungmin's admission. Jungmin's sudden yell snapped him out of his thoughts. The game was just about to start. Junwoo leaned back, annoyed at the lineup, while Jungmin remained fully absorbed, chewing eagerly and keeping his eyes glued to the screen. They waved the team flags they had brought, clearly Jungmin's idea. Jungmin cheered excitedly whenever a player made a layup, while Junwoo stayed calm, holding the team flag. When a pass went astray, Jungmin dramatically flopped onto Junwoo's shoulder, mock crying. Drinks and empty popcorn scattered across the table as the game went on, evidence of their excitement. Jungmin stretched and mentioned his throat was dry from all the popcorn, offering Junwoo some cold water, but he shook his head, insisting he was fine. Just as Jungmin was leaving, his phone buzzed on the couch. Junwoo was shocked when he saw the name on the screen, Cho Hui. Jungmin flinched, surprised that she was calling. Apparently, Jungmin messaged her earlier about meeting up. He had something to say to her. She mentioned she was free, and they agreed to meet her at the cafe immediately. Junwoo asked why Cho Hui had called so suddenly, but Jungmin was in Wonderland. His cheeks warmed as he held the phone and reflected on the courage it had taken to talk to her. Junwoo was shocked he actually contacted her again after his warning. Without hesitation, Jungmin dashed into his room to change and emerged moments later, announcing that he had important business to attend to and had to leave immediately. Junwoo asked if he was being serious, but Jungmin nodded confidently, insisting he had a good feeling about asking Cho Hui out today. Junwoo asked him to wait. He had something to tell him, but Jungmin was already in a hurry, suggesting they watch the rest of the game later, stepping away before Junwoo could say more. Sitting back on the couch, Junwoo thought about how Cho Hui had asked him out previously. His fingers fidgeted over his phone, unsure if he should tell Jungmin, but he reasoned that her feelings might have changed by now. His eyes lit up as a new message appeared. It was Ajin, surprising him completely. She was checking up on him. At the cafe, Jungmin entered nervously, clutching a flower he bought on his way. He tried to stay calm, convincing himself that everything would be all right. The cafe attendant admired the flower, assuring him that his girlfriend would love it. Jungmin mentioned that she wasn't actually his girlfriend, but hoped she would like it. Across the room, he spotted Cho Hui and called out to her, sweat dripping from his face. He handed her the flowers and confessed how he felt about her drawing the attention of nearby patrons. Cho Hui responded with a classic facepalm gesture. She motioned for him to sit down. He was too loud and everyone was staring. Jungmin muttered, "All right," trying to calm his nerves and wondering if he had overdone it. When the waiter arrived with hibiscus tea, Jungmin gulped nervously, questioning whether he had ordered appropriately. He was so nervous at this point. Cho Hui sipped her tea slowly, hands resting gently on the table, before admitting plainly that she liked Junwoo. Jungmin's eyes widened in shock at her confession. She continued, revealing that she has had a crush on Junwoo for a long time and even confessed her feelings to him. And judging by his reaction, she guessed he hadn't told him. Jungmin was stunned at this point, staring down at the table. Then she bluntly mentioned that she can never date Jungmin. Those words shattered his heart. Elsewhere, in the city, Junwoo leaned against a wall as nearby girls whispered and admired him from a distance, whispering within themselves that he was good-looking. He didn't pay any attention to them. He was fully focused on the game, which was now streaming on his phone. He remembered how excited Jungmin had been before leaving the house and felt a pang of guilt for his friend. Junwoo lowered his eyes, replaying Cho Hui's words when she confessed she liked him and let out a deep sigh. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Ajin approached out of nowhere, looking adorable, and asked what he couldn't stop thinking about, but he only murmured a distracted, "Hey," mentioning she had arrived early. She extended her hand, showing him what she had brought. He asked what it was, and she mentioned cheerfully that it was a tart she had baked herself, and asked if he liked stuff like that. Junwoo accepted it politely, thanking her and remarking that his mother sometimes made the same baked once in a while too. He was even more surprised when she mentioned it was a green apple tart. She scratched her head, explaining that she remembered his green apple drawing when thinking of what to make. She felt bad for not visiting him in the hospital, and this was her way of apologizing. Junwoo cleared his throat, assuring her that he didn't mind, and asked if that was the reason she had wanted to meet. She said it was, and that she wanted to give him as soon as possible because she just made them, telling him to eat before it got cold. She paused, promising she would see him at school tomorrow. He was surprised she wasn't staying, but she explained she had business to attend to. She revealed that the claw machine added her favorite bread doll and said she had to get it no matter what. Junwoo stood silently, unsure of what to do. He wanted to move, then finally decided to go after her. Inside, Ajin placed both hands on the claw machine, her eyes narrowing with intense focus. She muttered that she was so close, shaking her head in quiet frustration. Junwoo leaned from the corner, observing her calmly, urging her to stop since she had already used up all her money. But she refused to give up, clenching her fist with stubborn hope. She bent forward slightly, her breath unsteady as she called out his name. Then, shot up, eyes wide with desperate anticipation, and asked for him to lend her some money. Junwoo stared back at her, arms crossed as he imagined she was joking or something. Nearby, a couple argued in defeat. The girlfriend's frustration echoed as Junwoo noticed something on the wall. Suddenly, he moved decisively, telling Ajin to follow. She trailed behind, confused, until he stopped at the basketball court, insisting that he was going to play. Ajin tilted her head in disbelief. She didn't know he was into basketball. She thought all he did was study. Just then, her gaze lifted to the bold banner above the court which Junwoo asked her to read. She immediately realized they could equally win the bread doll here. Junwoo explained with a smile curving on his lips that he played basketball whenever he felt frustrated. Ajin's lips parted slightly. She recalled the first time they met. He had borrowed her battery pack to see a basketball game. He handed her the snack box, asking her to help him hold it before preparing to play, and she encouraged him, watching as he slipped a note into the slot. He cast her a sideways glance as the game was about to begin, catching the hopeful light in her eyes, and the faintest smile curved his lips. The countdown blared, making Ajin flinch, followed by the sound of rattling balls which filled the room. Junwoo gripped the first ball, stance calm, but focused. Holding it high, he aimed carefully and released it. The ball soared smoothly through the hoop. Ajin's eyes widened in awe. She couldn't believe it went in. He grabbed another ball with both hands and threw it with precise accuracy, another perfect shot lighting up the scoreboard. The numbers climbed steadily, glowing brighter with each throw. He bent low again, movements sharp and clean, releasing yet another ball with perfect control. Whispers rippled through the crowd, their attention fully on him, and Ajin pressed her hands to her mouth, thrill sparkling in her gaze as she imagined the bread doll. The score rose higher and higher, surpassing every expectation. Her heart pounded as she shouted encouragement, reminding him that he had 20 more points to go. Junwoo's expression hardened, body moving with an unwavering rhythm as he grabbed the last ball. With the same unbroken focus, he made the shot. Her voice rang through the noise, pure and unrestrained. "Go, Junwoo." The last ball fell cleanly into the net, just like that victory claimed. He handed her the prize, her precious bread doll. As they walked home, Ajin hugged the bread doll tightly, her joy spilling over in every movement while Junwoo's eyes lingered on her, softened by the glow of her happiness. She held the bread doll close, saying she had only brought a tart for him but would return with something better. She thanked him repeatedly while Junwoo remained silent, quietly watching her. Junwoo tried to speak as Ajin continued admiring her cute bread doll, then brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. Her finger pointed forward, guiding them toward the bus stop, and they paused by the sign, discussing which bus they would take. As she turned to leave, her smile remained sweet. She said she had fun and promised to see him at school on Monday. Junwoo's voice, however, halted her. She turned toward him, still smiling. Junwoo stood still, one hand buried deep in his pocket as he asked if she knew the trainee teacher. Her smile faltered. The question caught her completely off guard as she wondered how he knew and why he was asking all of a sudden. She stepped forward hesitantly, then admitted that he was actually her first love. Junwoo froze, the weight of her confession settling over him. His chest rose slowly as he stood opposite her. "Our art teacher is your first love?" he asked, voice steady. Carrying the question further, he asked if she still had feelings for him. Unsure of how to respond, Ajin sank onto the bench, saying she wasn't sure. She added that he had a girlfriend, and no matter her feelings, he would never notice a high school girl like her. Junwoo sat beside her, telling her she sounded like she still liked him. Her hands tightened on the doll. She said it wasn't that. "He has a girlfriend." His fingers intertwined nervously, thoughts restless and searching as he mentioned that he was curious about how she felt. Nothing else. Back at school, Junwoo walked down the hallway, heading for his counseling session. He scratched the back of his head, regretting what he said to Ajin the other day. He wondered if she felt embarrassed and what she would say after her counseling session. He rattled the door open, and Mr. Kim was there, calm as ever, holding a record in one hand and a cup in the other. Junwoo turned his face away. Mr. Kim was the last person he wanted to see that morning. He shut his eyes tightly as the memory of Ajin's words, "He's my first love," flashed through his mind. When he got to his teacher's desk, it was empty. Junwoo wondered if he had gone to the bathroom. Mr. Kim's voice cut through the silence. He asked Junwoo if he was here for counseling. He explained quickly that his teacher handled the girls and he would handle the boys. Junwoo felt uneasy as Mr. Kim gestured for him to take a seat. "Junwoo, right?" Mr. Kim called. He mentioned that he was a smart kid, always at the top and wouldn't be needing help with his grades. Junwoo sat stiffly, wishing this would be over so he could leave and study. Mr. Kim flipped through the records calmly as Junwoo stared, restless and reserved. Mr. Kim continued, asking if Junwoo got along with his friends. He answered quietly, almost unwilling to speak. Flipping another page, Mr. Kim tapped his chin, studying the records as Junwoo grew impatient and eager to leave. Finally, Junwoo stood, asking if he could leave since there were no more questions. Mr. Kim nodded, closing the book slowly, but then asked if he was friends with Ajin. The question threw Junwoo off guard. He rose more sharply this time, standing tall. He said she's his partner and asked why he asked. Mr. Kim smiled faintly. Seeing through him, he knew his question triggered him. Junwoo's glare burned into him. Mr. Kim folded his arms, staring back at him. He finally broke the silence, mentioning that what he was about to ask was sensitive. He asked if Ajin was being bullied. Junwoo wasn't expecting that. On the other side of the office, Cho-hui chatted with the counselor. The teacher asked if she had an older boyfriend, but she lied that her cousin flew in recently, and someone must have seen them together and misunderstood. The teacher smiled, relieved. She said she believed her and was glad it was family. Cho-hui was finally excused, stepping out of the office while some girls across the hall were conversing. She frowned, wondering who had told the teacher about her older boyfriend. Her anger was cut short when she overheard the girls talk about Jungmin, apparently. He was throwing a party that weekend. One of the girls giggled, asking if Junwoo would attend as she walked past. Cho-hui smirked at the mention of Junwoo's name. She knew that if Jungmin was throwing a party, Junwoo would be there. Elsewhere, Junwoo walked up the stairs slowly, his mind adrift in thought. As he climbed, memories of the counseling section crept back into his mind. He remembered how the art room door had been clumsily tied shut with a wire. His jaw tightened as the realization struck him. Someone must have trapped her there. He recalled Ajin mentioning that the art teacher had asked for her help, and suddenly, a face flashed through his mind. It could only be Cho-hui. The boys who wanted to attack Ajin had mentioned her name too. He couldn't wrap his head around what was really going on, but one thing was certain. Cho-hui was acting weird. She wasn't acting as a friend should. Could she actually hate Ajin? His thoughts tangled further until a voice called out his name, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was Jungmin. He wanted to talk to him about something and asked him to follow him, his expression unusually tense. Junwoo noticed immediately that Jungmin didn't seem like himself. He told him that they should talk later because he had a lot on his mind, but Jungmin grabbed his wrist firmly. Junwoo turned and there was no trace of his friend's usual grin, only cold intensity. In a low, clipped tone, Jungmin ordered him to follow him. Without another word, he led Junwoo up the stairs to the rooftop. Jungmin, although angry, was confused on what to do next. He wondered if he would punch him like in the movies. Junwoo trailed behind, finally asking what was wrong and why they were at the rooftop. Jungmin knew he couldn't let things slide. Without warning, he swung at Junwoo, his so-called punch of love. But Junwoo moved quickly, tilting aside and catching Jungmin's wrist midair. His voice remained calm as he told him to use his words, not his fists. Jungmin was left frustrated at how Junwoo stopped him so easily. The pain in his arm made him wince as he struggled to pull free. He wondered how someone who only studied was this strong. He cried out and finally yanked his arm loose, stumbling backward onto the concrete. The air between them thickened with tension. A silent battle of stares. Crawling back toward the railing, Jungmin spat out his frustration, accusing Junwoo of knowing all along that Cho-hwee liked him. His voice cracked as he continued, insisting that Junwoo must have thought it was funny, playing along and making fun of him behind his back. But Junwoo's expression stayed calm, which annoyed Jungmin further. Junwoo said quietly that he didn't have to explain everything to him. Jungmin's voice rose, shouting that Junwoo should have told him from the start. Junwoo swallowed hard, insisting that he had never mocked him, that he had turned Cho-hwee down long ago. He sat beside Jungmin, explaining that he simply had no interest in her, and he didn't tell him because he didn't want to hurt him. Jungmin flinched at the words as his anger softened. After a long pause, Junwoo added, almost hesitating, that Jungmin already knew who he liked. He just didn't want to say anything he might regret. Then, more softly, he said that Jungmin had always been the closest person to him. Jungmin's mind flashed back to old memories. The basketball court, the afternoons spent together, the day with the animals. So many shared moments. Yeah, we're pretty close, he muttered finally, his voice quieter, almost regretful. Then a small smirk appeared as he teased that he shouldn't be moving on from everything so quickly. Turning to him again, Jungmin said his parents were out that weekend and declared that Junwoo had no choice but to come to his party. No excuses. Junwoo groaned under his breath, calling it a hassle, but Jungmin pressed on, apologizing for trying to punch him. Reminding him that he was the one who'd been hurt in all of this, adding jokingly that he was sure he broke his tailbone when he fell. Junwoo said nothing, his silence heavier than any argument. He only flinched when Jungmin mentioned that their friend Ji-hoon would be bringing a signed basketball by Najodan. He added that there would be board games and even a Bluetooth speaker. After a moment, Junwoo finally muttered, "We'll see." When the weekend arrived, Jungmin's house buzzed with life. Two girls clustered together, laughing as they shared how each of them had first met him. On the couch, two other guys were gaming, shouting and joking about who would win, while Jungmin stood nearby setting the table. Across the room, Ji-hoon and three other kids sat in a small circle on the floor playing a board game. Suddenly, one of them shouted for Jungmin. Someone was at the door. One of the girls near the door asked if it might be Ajin, but the other shook her head, saying Ajin was busy baking. Curious, Jungmin walked toward the door, wondering who could be visiting in the middle of his party. When he opened the door, Cho-hwee was standing there, waving softly with a practiced smile. He asked what she was doing here. She lowered her gaze, her expression feigning regret. In a quiet voice, she said she felt sorry about how she had spoken to him last time and was hoping they could still be friends. "Friends?" Jungmin repeated, taken aback. She lifted a small box of snacks, saying she didn't know which ones he liked, so she had brought different flavors for him to choose from. She wanted to know if they could eat them together and talk. When she handed it to him, she glanced toward the noisy house and remarked that he seemed busy entertaining guests. He dismissed it easily, saying they were only friends hanging out. Still, a small part of him wondered if she had really come just to see him alone. Her lips turned downward again, her tone dripping with feigned sadness. She told him it was fine, that he should go back to his friends. Then she turned away slowly, head bowed, pretending to leave. Jungmin didn't want her to walk away like that. He remembered that Junwoo had gone upstairs to watch basketball, so he decided to keep her downstairs, away from him. Just before she could leave, he called out quickly, asking if she would like to come inside. Cho-hwee turned back, a sly smile tugging at her lips. Her plan had worked. Her little act of innocence had paid off. Inside, the party was glowing with warmth and laughter. Jungmin chatted politely with Cho-hwee, asking her to wait at the table. She glanced around, wondering if Junwoo had arrived yet. All around her, clusters of guests laughed, danced, or talked in corners. Two girls sitting nearby whispered to each other, surprised to see her dressed up as if it were a formal event. It was only supposed to be a casual party. Cho-hwee, on the other hand, smirked inwardly, finding it pathetic that some people had shown up in hoodies. She took a seat between two boys and asked Jungmin for a drink, claiming she was parched from walking all the way to his house. One of the boys turned toward her with a bright grin, greeting her, reminding her they met during the school's field trip and told her she looked pretty. Proud of her looks, she thought about how she had always been pretty, and tonight, even more so. She brushed off the compliments with mock modesty, saying she wasn't all that pretty, but he insisted, adding that she was the prettiest girl at the party. Her eyes wandered across Youngmin's house. It was surprisingly modern and stylish. She knew Junwoo was rich, but Youngmin seemed pretty wealthy also. She was curious about what his house looks like inside. Moments later, Youngmin returned with bottles of drinks, admitting he didn't know what she liked, so he had brought several options. She smiled sweetly, thanked him, and asked for a tour of the house. He hesitated, but eventually agreed. Before he could start, some friends called out, asking for drinks too. Youngmin went around handing out drinks and laughing awkwardly with his friends. In the midst of the distraction, Cho-hoi quietly slipped away through the hallway, eager to find a private spot with Junwoo. She paused when she heard faint voices coming from one of the rooms, curiosity sparking immediately. Slowly, she peeked through the small gap of a half-open door. Her eyes lit up. Junwoo was there. He sat on a swivel chair with his phone in hand. He was watching something on his phone. A smirk curved her lips. So he had been here all along. Composing herself, she pushed the door open gently and stepped inside, pretending to be casual. She told him Youngmin had said she could rest in his room for a while. Meanwhile, downstairs, Jungmin was exhausted from entertaining everyone. Hosting, he realized, was far more tiring than he had imagined. As he caught his breath, he suddenly remembered that Cho-hoi had asked for a drink also. He looked around for her, wondering where she had gone. Then someone mentioned that she went inside. "Inside?" he shouted in alarm. Panic flashed across his face. A girl beside him winced at his loud voice, covering her ears and asking why he was yelling. Upstairs, Cho-hoi leaned closer to Junwoo, her tone soft as she asked about his arm. Junwoo's patience snapped. He pulled his arm away sharply, asking her not to touch him. Then, standing firmly, he said they needed to talk. Cho-hoi only smiled, pretending to be calm, and asked lightly what he wanted to talk about. Junwoo's tone grew darker as he told her that the bullies who had broken his hand had mentioned her name. Cho-hoi froze, her face stiffening as unease flooded her chest. Questions spun through her mind. Why was he bringing this up, and what exactly did he know? He met her eyes sharply, asking why she had done it. The air between them turned heavy, tense enough to choke on. Trembling, she stammered out that it didn't matter if they knew her name. She had nothing to do with those people. Her voice quivered as she tried to defend herself, insisting that she had no connection to the bullies he spoke of. Junwoo's eyes narrowed as if piecing together a truth he already knew. Then he asked why she locked Ajin in the art room. Her eyes widened in horror as panic flickered across her face. She hadn't been caught on the security camera. How could he possibly know? Outside the doorway, Jungmin stood frozen as he overheard every word. He could still hear Junwoo's voice as he told Cho-hoi that he didn't care what she was up to, but she should leave Ajin out of it. He tried to process what he had just heard. Why would Cho-hoi ever do something so cruel to Ajin? Hearing his name being called by the guests downstairs, Jungmin turned abruptly. If he stayed any longer, others might overhear their argument. Reluctantly, he walked away, leaving behind the storm brewing inside that room. Back inside, Cho-hoi began to sob, her voice cracking as she cried that she would never do such a thing. Between sniffs, she glanced up at Junwoo with tear-streaked cheeks, trying to look innocent, repeating that she hadn't done it. Junwoo stood still, cold and unyielding, his eyes burning with quiet anger. His silence spoke louder than any words. Seeing his expression, she realized he didn't believe her. Her act, the tears, the trembling voice, none of it was working this time. Suddenly, she spun around, shouting out an apology before bolting for the door. She ran outside, leaving the house, realizing she had ruined everything. She slowed down, her steps growing smaller. Her breathing came in ragged bursts as she whispered his name. Junwoo. Behind her, laughter and chatter drifted from the house, echoing through the walls. a cruel reminder that the world kept spinning while hers was falling apart. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she realized she might never get another chance with Junwoo. She wondered how he had found out. Her mind raced, searching for someone to blame. Then suddenly her eyes widened, realization piercing through her sorrow. Of course, she blamed everything on Ajin. Her hand clenched tightly around her phone as she vowed quietly that Ajin would pay for this. Elsewhere, Ajin stretched her arm to reach a high shelf, smiling at the cute display of cookies. She couldn't decide between the lemon-flavored bear cookies and the cat-shaped ones. Both were so adorable that it felt wrong to pick one over the other. She sighed, realizing that if she kept wandering around the shop like this, she'd end up spending all her money before even getting the ingredients she came for. Turning toward the baking section, she walked down the aisle, scanning the shelves. When she reached the powdered sugar section, she stopped abruptly. The shelf was completely empty. Another customer nearby noticed her confusion. "My powdered sugar," Ajin mumbled helplessly, glancing at the lady. The lady smiled kindly and explained that the shop owner had gone to bring more from the back, noticing Ajin's flustered expression. Ajin immediately felt grateful. The lady's soft tone carried warmth, and Ajin thanked her sincerely. As she waited, she pictured herself sprinkling powdered sugar like snow over her strawberry roll cakes. The image was so pretty that it made her smile unconsciously. The lady, intrigued, asked if Ajin also baked and what she planned to make with the sugar. "Strawberry roll cakes," she replied, and coincidentally, she was making the same thing. Just then, the owner returned, holding a single pack of powdered sugar. Apologetically, the owner explained that it was already reserved for the lady beside her. Ajin sighed softly and scratched her cheek in frustration. Her schedule was already tight, and she couldn't afford to mess up now. She had already promised her followers a new baking video. Understanding the situation, she smiled politely and said she'd find powdered sugar somewhere else. The owner nodded sympathetically, saying her fans would have to wait just a little longer for her next Sweet Honey video. The lady looked starstruck when she heard Sweet Honey. The shop owner chuckled softly, explaining that Ajin ran a small baking channel online, one so popular that her featured ingredients often sold out overnight. The comment made Ajin blush in embarrassment. The lady's eyes widened with delight as she quickly pulled out her phone and confessed excitedly that she was a big fan. Ajin and the owner stared at her in surprise, caught completely off guard. She added that she actually came to buy the powdered sugar because of the post she made. She gently placed the pack of powdered sugar into Ajin's hands. She asked her to please take it, and make sure to upload the strawberry roll cake video on the bus ride home. Ajin, sitting by the window, thought back to the lady from the shop and their brief, cheerful conversation. A faint smile crossed her lips as she remembered how flustered she had been, and how they ended up exchanging numbers before parting ways. Resting her head against the cool glass, she thought to herself that she still had a lot to learn and needed to keep growing, but she was so grateful. Just then, her stop was announced. When she arrived at the city library, banners fluttered in the air announcing the 30th anniversary celebration. Ajin, with a determined look, whispered to herself, "Time to study." The building buzzed with life. Crowds filled the lobby, maybe because of the anniversary event. So she decided to borrow a book and go home. A boy from one of the stands waved, calling for her to join his event. She smiled politely and declined, saying she was only there to borrow a book. But as she started walking away, another guy suddenly turned, his eyes widening in recognition. "Ajin?" he called. She blinked in surprise. It was her teacher, Gwanghyun. He stepped closer with a smile on his face. He said her voice still sounded just like it did back in the old days. Turning toward the counter, he asked the librarian for a book while Ajin stood behind, unsure what to say. When he returned, he held out a small trinket in his palm, a tiny keychain that jingled. He handed it to her, explaining that he got it from one of the anniversary events and thought she might like it. Ajin accepted it, admiring the delicate design. It was cute and glittery, too pretty not to smile at. She thanked him softly. As they walked deeper into the library together, he asked what kind of book she was looking for. She told him she wanted one about baking. While climbing the stairs, a couple arguing playfully about what they should do next. Thinking for a moment, she asked whether his house was far away, or if maybe he was supposed to be on a date. He raised an eyebrow, teasingly amused. He came to borrow some materials he needed, then asked what she meant by a date. Realizing what she had just implied, Ajin covered her mouth and quickly apologized, saying she didn't mean it like that. He bent slightly to meet her eyes. He said he wasn't mad. The question was just unexpected, then mentioned he didn't have a girlfriend. He asked if she had a boyfriend and if he was a good guy. Ajin blurted out quickly that she was still in high school, didn't have a boyfriend, and no one would like her that way anyway. Flustered by her own honesty, she pushed his arm lightly and told him to forget the topic altogether. As they climbed further up, he mentioned that he needed to stop by the old archive room. Her hand brushed over her chest as a faint memory surfaced. How she had cried so hard a year ago when she found out he had a girlfriend. So why didn't she feel happy now that he didn't? Her thoughts were interrupted when he called her name, asking how school had been. Pointing to herself, she smiled and said everything was fine, although she didn't like studying, and that she was looking forward to sports day. He nodded, acknowledging that she didn't seem like someone who lied, then added in a gentle tone that if something ever bothered her, she could always talk to him. They continued chatting as they walked together. Ajin asked if he was attending sports day, and he laughed, saying he was in charge of running the games. But just a few steps behind them, a phone camera followed their every move. Hidden in the corner, Cho-hui stood silently, her phone raised, recording. Her lips curved into a cold smile. She had come here intending to confront Ajin, to slap her across the face. But now she had stumbled upon something far more useful. Zooming in, the photo Cho-hui captured looked far too intimate, as though Ajin and Mr. Kim were about to kiss. A wicked smirk curled on her lips as her mind twisted with dark ideas. She told herself that if she had fallen so low, she wouldn't go alone. The next day, Ajin stood by her desk, packing her bag for school. Halfway through, she suddenly froze. Something was missing. Her keyring. Her memory flashed back to when Gwanghyun handed it to her the previous day. She had set it aside, too distracted by the excitement of posting a new video for her baking channel. She glanced at her bag. The only spot for the keyring was already occupied by the bread doll, the one Junwoo had worked so hard to win for her. For a moment, she hesitated. Which one should stay? The bread doll or the new keyring? After a quiet sigh, she decided to stick with the bread doll. She zipped up her bag and stepped out into the bright morning. Ajin smiled, clutching her bag proudly. Today, they were picking their class t-shirts and activities for the big event. She couldn't wait. But before she could take another step, a pair of arms wrapped suddenly around her from behind. She turned to see it was Cho-hui. Her surprise quickly softened into a polite smile. Ajin immediately mentioned she had something to talk about. She whispered in her ears that she ran into Gwanghyun at the library yesterday. Cho-hui tilted her head, asking what the two of them had talked about. Leaning closer, Ajin whispered shyly that he had told her he didn't have a girlfriend. Cho-hui covered her mouth dramatically, teasing, "So that's why you're glowing today." Before Ajin could protest, she grabbed her by the shoulders, urging her to confess her feelings to him already. Ajin insisted it wasn't like that, but Cho-hui only pushed harder, promising she'd help her figure it out. Neither of them noticed Junwoo standing at a distance, watching quietly. His gaze fixed on them with a hint of coldness in his eyes. Inside the classroom, Sports Day was written boldly across the board, with t-shirts and activities highlighted underneath. Jungmin stood at the front. He announced it was time to choose their team shirts and plan the games. His first suggestion, a prisoner-style t-shirt, was immediately rejected by the class. Undeterred, he proposed hospital gown-style shirts next. Ajin liked the idea, while Junwoo sat silently, lost in thought. He couldn't stop replaying what he'd seen earlier. Ajin and Cho-hui seemed closer than he had thought. Still, he reminded himself that she didn't know the truth about Cho-hui yet. He needed to warn her someday. At the back of the class, a boy suddenly asked if they should get a matching t-shirt for Mr. Kim too, since he was their class teacher. The class erupted into chatter as they agreed to get for him also. Ajin looked up instinctively. Then her gaze met Junwoo's. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She broke the awkward silence and asked quietly if he had something to say. Junwoo shook his head, indicating he didn't, then asked her if she had. Ajin seized the moment, saying she had something to tell him since they were already talking about Mr. Kim. Junwoo's shoulders tensed as he asked her to go ahead. Almost in a whisper, she told him that Mr. Kim had mentioned he didn't have a girlfriend. A strange mix of emotions stirred inside Junwoo. Relief, confusion, even a trace of jealousy he didn't want to admit. Trying to sound casual, he said lightly, "Oh, really? So?" Ajin scratched her head with an awkward laugh, saying that was all. She had told him earlier that Mr. Kim had one, so she was just clearing things up. Junwoo's voice stiffened as he asked if she was planning to ask him out now. Ajin rested her chin on her hands, chuckling softly. She said her crush on Mr. Kim was old news, and she had already moved on from that. Junwoo nodded slowly. As he turned toward the board again, his eyes softened. Ever since Ajin had confessed that Mr. Kim was her first love, the thought had bothered him more than he liked to admit. But now, hearing that she no longer felt that way, he couldn't help the small warmth blooming in his chest. At the front of the class, Youngmin wrapped up the t-shirt discussion and moved to the next big topic, the sports day main event. He announced that the teacher wanted their class to win this year, and that the best performing student would receive a special prize, a 4DX movie ticket. Junwoo's mind flashed instantly to Ajin. If he won, it would be the perfect, natural excuse to ask her to the movies. The classroom erupted into noise. Everyone began shouting which activities they wanted. Dodgeball, jump rope, basketball. Jungmin called for everyone to calm down. Suddenly, Junwoo stood up, screeching his chair against the floor as Jungmin raised a brow, half-jokingly asking if he needed to use the bathroom. But Junwoo raised his hand and declared he'll be participating in all the events. Later that day, the teacher's voice echoed through the classroom. She encouraged the students, saying she believed in them. They just had to give it their all. Moments later, the announcement for the basketball match came through. The teacher told everyone to get ready, and the classroom burst into motion. Students poured into the hallway, laughing, adjusting their uniforms, and cheering. Some girls stayed behind, touching up their makeup, hoping to look cute for the boys on the court. One of Ajin's friends waved her over, offering to help her with her hair. Ajin hesitated, mumbling that she was a bit embarrassed. Her friend teased her, saying that this was her one chance to shine. She promised to make her look perfect. After a bit of convincing, Ajin gave in and sat down. The teacher, already heading out, glanced at them. She told them they were pretty just the way they are and reminded the girls not to be late, and to lock the classroom door when they finished. Ajin bit her lip nervously as her friend styled her hair. When she finally looked into the mirror, she wasn't sure if the new hairstyle suited her, but when her friends gasped and told her how pretty she looked. Outside the school, a massive banner fluttered across the schoolyard. The 20th Seorin High School One Heart Sports Meet. The basketball court was alive with noise. Boys warmed up on the court, bouncing balls against the polished floor, while students filled the stands. The announcer declared the match between Class 1 versus Class 2 was starting as the players, including Junwoo, stretched. Mr. Kim clapped his hands, asking if everyone was ready, and said the game would begin as soon as he blew the whistle. The players stretched, joked, and sized up their opponents. Junwoo rolled his shoulders, scanning the other side of the court, wondering who Class 2's ace might be. At the stands, Ajin and her friends finally arrived, a little late from fixing her hair. They found seats in the corner, close enough to see everything. As Junwoo glanced toward the crowd, he spotted Ajin. She had arrived just in time. On the court, Mr. Kim stepped forward with the whistle between his lips. The crowd began chanting, alternating between Class 1 and Class 2. Students from both classes cheered their respective teams on, but Junwoo barely noticed the noise. His focus narrowed to a single goal. To win the MVP prize, he was determined to win it no matter what it took. The whistle blew, and Junwoo jumped high, grabbing the ball mid-air before his opponent could reach it. The game ignited. Sneakers squeaked against the floor, voices shouted plays, and the ball zipped back and forth between hands. Ajin gasped, watching Junwoo move with a speed and precision she hadn't expected. Her friend cheered beside her. Go, Class 1. The sound of dribbling filled the court. Pass. Defense. Shoot, echoed across the gym. Jungmin caught the ball, but a defender charged at him. Without hesitation, he tossed it toward Junwoo. Junwoo caught the ball and dashed forward. Jungmin blocked the path just long enough for Junwoo to get a clean shot. Junwoo ran back, breathing hard as opponents admitted he was on another level. The crowd cheered, Go, Junwoo! Ajin's eyes sparkled as she watched, unable to look away. Just then, Junwoo's eyes meet hers. For a moment, it felt like it was just the both of them. Ajin's cheeks burned red, her heart pounding with a strange mix of excitement and confusion. She was about to whisper something to her friend when the girl beside her suddenly squealed that Junwoo had just locked eyes with her. The girls around them screamed in delight, shouting that he was handsome. And Ajin blinked, realizing with a sting of embarrassment that he might not have been looking at her at all. Down on the court, Junwoo and Jungmin bumped shoulders, grinning at each other in celebration. Their teamwork was seamless and the scoreboard flashed their progress. Class 1 was in the lead. The teacher clapped proudly from the sidelines, her voice barely audible over the roar of cheering students. The atmosphere was electric. Jaehoon, another of their classmates, caught the ball, sprinting across the court with laser focus. From the stands, Junwoo and her friends cheered louder. Let's go. He jumped, released the ball midair, and sent it spinning straight toward the hoop. The crowd went wild. Students rose to their feet, clapping and chanting his name. Moments later, the ball was back in play. Class 2 pushed hard to even the score. But their attempt ricocheted off the backboard as Class 1's defense tightened. From the scorer's table, Mr. Kim announced it was time for a break. The score was tied, 20-20. The players gathered together, some sitting along the benches, others standing to drink water and catch their breath. Junwoo was panting heavily from the first half's intensity. Sweat rolled down his temple, but his thoughts weren't on the game. All he could picture was the movie ticket, and Ajin beside him at the theater. The thought alone reignited his drive. Across the court, Ajin approached Mr. Kim with a polite smile, offering to help him carry some equipment. From the team bench, Junwoo's hand tightened around his water bottle, watching them with silent irritation as Jungmin wondered what he was staring at. Mr. Kim asked gently if the box was too heavy. Ajin shook her head, saying she could handle it. Jungmin, noticing Junwoo's expression, grinned mischievously and nudged him, saying Ajin and Mr. Kim looked pretty close. Junwoo turned sharply, asking what he just said. His tone came out sharper than intended. Jungmin grinned, saying he didn't mean anything by it. Mr. Kim was just friendly with his students, that's all. Still looking at them, he added that Mr. Kim seemed quite popular with the girls. Junwoo scoffed, trying to sound casual, saying Ajin was just stuck running errands like a fool. But Jungmin wasn't fooled. He smirked, asking if Junwoo was feeling jealous. Junwoo swung lightly at him, warning to stop being ridiculous, but Jungmin dodged with a laugh, teasing him for missing. As Ajin handed out bottles of water to the boys, he teased that Junwoo should stop pretending. He was clearly bothered. Junwoo cracked open his water bottle, saying he didn't care. He thought Jungmin would drop it, but instead he encouraged him to be a man and ask her out. Then he walked off, saying that if he didn't act, someone else might ask Ajin out. Trying to keep his tough boy attitude, Junwoo said he should just focus on the match. After helping the boys, Ajin turned towards Junwoo, shouting and cheering him on. Junwoo froze mid-sip. His face turned bright red as he coughed, quickly turning away to hide it. He muttered under his breath that he would win, no matter what. Mr. Kim blew the whistle, signaling the start of the second half. The tension snapped back instantly as Junwoo dribbled the ball past his opponent. He dashed forward, the ball in his grip as a Class 2 defender chased him down. The students cheered wildly, their voices echoing across the gym as an opposing team shouted for someone to block him. Ajin sat in the stands, her hands clasped tightly together as she cheered with the others. Her heart thudded as she watched him glide across the court with quiet confidence. The tension grew as the scoreboard flickered. Class 2 was leading. The crowd's noise built as Class 2 students cheered their team on. Ajin and her friends watched with wide eyes as Jungmin took the ball, dribbled swiftly before calling out for Junwoo. Class 1 fans shouted encouragement, desperate for a turnaround. Time wasn't on their side. They glanced at the clock. They had only 3 seconds left. Ajin pressed her palms together, silently praying for Junwoo to make one more basket. As if he heard her, Junwoo caught Youngmin's pass. He jumped, his hand extended. The ball left his fingertips, spinning high through the air toward the net as the buzzer began to sound. The ball sailed cleanly through the air and dropped straight into the net. Ajin's eyes lit up. It was a perfect three-pointer, and it meant they had just won. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. He declared Class 1 of the 11th grade champions, undefeated. The stands exploded in celebration. Students jumped to their feet, hugging one another and chanting. Their teacher clapped through tears, proud beyond words, while the opposing team muttered among themselves, saying they could have won if they'd just held on for a few more seconds. Jungmin threw his arms around Junwoo, laughing breathlessly. The rest of Class 1 joined in, shouting over each other about how incredible that last shot had been. Around them, a teammate called out to Mr. Kim, yelling that they had won. Class 2 students groaned and sighed, disappointed that victory had slipped from their grasp. Amid the noise, Junwoo quietly stepped away from the crowd. Ajin noticed first. Her gaze followed him instinctively, her heart still racing. When Junwoo turned, sweat glistening on his skin, their eyes met across the distance and he smiled softly at her. Ajin's breath caught. Her face flushed pink. For a moment, time stood still. At the cafeteria, everyone was talking about how amazing Junwoo had been, how rare it was to see him score from that far away. Standing in line with her tray, Ajin remembered watching him play. He had seemed different from his usual quiet, grumpy self. As she thought about it, she was almost certain their eyes had met during the game. Her friend's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. She wanted a favor. Her friend explained that she wanted to switch partners for the dodgeball game later that day. She wanted to team up with Jaehoon instead. She added with a nervous giggle that she and Jaehoon were kind of dating now. Ajin was a bit surprised, then agreed to switch. They talked more about it as they had lunch. Then Ajin asked who her original partner was. The scene shifted to the schoolyard for the dodgeball game. Ajin stood nervously in front of Junwoo. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Junwoo, puzzled, asked if she had something to say to him. She shook her head quickly, saying it wasn't important. She had switched partners with her friend Yujin, but didn't know how to tell Junwoo she was his new partner. The coach announced to everyone to find their partners. The match was starting soon. Junwoo scanned the crowd looking for Yujin. He started to walk away, wishing Ajin good luck. He wondered who her partner was. As he was leaving, she asked him to wait and explained that she was his new partner. Yujin had asked her to switch. She wanted to know if it was okay with him. Junwoo blinked, processing her words. For a moment, he was confused. Then he played it off coolly, telling her to just stay out of his way. As the game was about to begin, he asked her to grab on tight and she nodded obediently. But her mind went blank immediately. Grab on? Where exactly? Before she could ask, the coach blew his whistle, asking Class 1 and Class 7 to get ready. The girls stood behind the boys, taking position. Ajin hesitated, then lightly pinched the back of Junwoo's shirt. Being that close made her heart pound. She hadn't realized before how broad his shoulders were. Then, with a sharp whoosh, the first ball flew from Class 7's side. Junwoo moved instinctively, dodging so suddenly that his shoulder brushed Ajin's cheek. He turned to check if she was okay. Ajin shook her head, flustered, saying she was fine. Another pair from Class 1 rushed forward to counterattack, but the coach's whistle blared, striking them out for letting go of each other. The same happened on Class 7's side. Another whistle, another team out. The game grew more chaotic with every second. Balls whizzed through the air as the coach shouted for them to dodge and also strike out teams. Junwoo turned slightly toward Ajin and told her he'll warn her before he moves, then asked her calmly not to let go of his shirt. He reached for her hand and placed it against his waist. Ajin's breath caught. The warmth of his skin through the thin fabric made her heart stumble. Only 4 players from Class 1 were left standing, and Class 7's team were confident that victory was theirs. Among the new players stepping forward was Cho Hui. She had claimed to be sick earlier, but her teacher didn't buy it. The heat was unbearable, and she complained about how ridiculous it was to be playing in such weather. Then her eyes found Junwoo. A bright, artificial smile spread across her face when she saw him on the field. But it faltered almost immediately when she noticed Ajin, who stood close behind Junwoo, gripping the edge of his shirt just like he'd told her to. Chohui's rage boiled over. A hot wave of jealousy surged through her. The ball rolled toward her feet and the coach called out, telling her to pass it along so they could restart play. Ajin glared at the ball, irritated, her anger clearly written all over her face. She picked it up with both hands, slowly walking forward. Ajin, on seeing her, was relieved because she hadn't seen her all day and was starting to get worried. Chohui's teammates whispered that she must still be sick, that she was probably too weak to throw the ball. Ajin, on hearing this, felt concerned. If she wasn't feeling well, why hadn't she gone to rest? A boy standing near Chohui offered to take the throw for her, but she ignored him completely. Her gaze was fixed, cold and unwavering, straight on Ajin. Ajin's stomach dropped. Why was Chohui looking at her like that? And before she could move, Chohui threw it straight at her and the ball hit Ajin squarely in the face. She stumbled backward and fell hard onto the ground, a cry escaping her lips. Junwoo turned instantly, his eyes wide with panic, sprinting toward her. Her friends rushed to her side, shouting her name as the coach blew his whistle sharply, signaling a timeout. Everyone crowded around her. Ajin sat up slowly as Junwoo dropped to his knees in front of her, asking if she was hurt. Chohui pretended to care, rushing over, asking if she was okay. Junwoo quickly suggested they go to the nurse's office. Seeing how Junwoo was concerned and caring towards Ajin only made Chohui more envious. Meanwhile, Ajin's friends turned on her, accusing her of throwing the ball on purpose. Of course, she denied it immediately, asking why she would do such a thing. She went ahead apologizing and asking if she was okay. Ajin, naive as usual, smiled, saying it's fine, suggesting it wasn't on purpose. Chohui offered to take her to the nurse, but Junwoo refused, firmly saying she was his partner and he'll take her. Ajin, oblivious to the tension, waved at her, smiling weakly, saying she'll be right back and she was okay. As Junwoo helped Ajin walk toward the stairs, Chohui stood rooted to the spot. Her plan had failed completely. Ajin's friends exchanged knowing glances behind her. They'd seen it. They knew Chohui's throw hadn't been an accident. In the hallway, the noise of the crowd faded. The two of them walked quietly, side by side, each lost in their own thoughts. Ajin's mind raced with embarrassment. She had fallen in front of everyone. How pathetic must she have looked? She should have just come alone instead of coming with him. Her thoughts broke when Junwoo spoke softly beside her, asking if she was okay. She said she was fine, but Junwoo shook his head. He mentioned that she just got hit in the face and injured her hands and knees. Ajin glanced at him, surprised by how upset he looked. Trying to lighten the mood, she said her face didn't hurt that much, just her hands and knees. But Junwoo didn't seem convinced. His brows stayed furrowed, his eyes flicking over the small bruises. Ajin opened her mouth to thank him, but instead the words that came out were, "I'm sorry." Junwoo was shocked. He turned toward her, asking why she was apologizing. She said they were out because of her and their class could have won. Junwoo stared at her in disbelief. He told her she had nothing to apologize for. Ajin hesitated. She thought Junwoo was upset because they got disqualified. Junwoo didn't reply immediately. She's the one who got hurt, he thought. And she's the one apologizing? She really is an innocent fool. Junwoo turned away, his voice dropping to a quiet murmur. He wanted to become MVP, but that ship has already sailed because of someone. Ajin froze. Because of someone? Did he mean her? She opened her mouth to ask, but before she could speak, he had already lowered his gaze to a letter resting on the nurse's desk. Ajin, he said suddenly, making her flinch. He picked up the note, explaining that the nurse wasn't around, so he would handle her first aid himself. He opened the window to let the warm afternoon air in and set the first aid kit on the edge of the bed. Sitting down, he looked at her and gently asked for her hand. She hesitated, saying she could do it herself. But he insisted. Guilt sat heavy in her chest. Everything about the day felt like her fault. She opened her mouth to apologize again, but he stopped her immediately. Her face flushed pink. She didn't know if it was his words, his closeness, or the way his hand gently enclosed hers. But her heart began to race uncontrollably. Carefully, Junwoo cleaned her wound, dabbing medicine over the scraped skin. Ajin gripped the hem of her shorts tightly, torn between the sting of antiseptic and the warmth spreading through her chest. He murmured that her injuries looked pretty bad as he pressed the cotton ball gently against the cut. Ajin flinched, squeezing her eyes shut from the sudden sting. When she opened them again, she blinked away the small tears that had gathered and whispered, "Thank you. It just hurts a little." Junwoo apologized he didn't mean for it to hurt. His words made Ajin stare at him, surprised by how gentle he sounded. He admitted it was his first time doing this, and he was trying his best to be gentle. Ajin was so nervous, her palms were sweating. She couldn't tell if it was from the pain or the way he was holding her hand. Just then, he asked for her other hand, setting the first one down. When she hesitated, he tilted his head slightly and said it looked worse than the other hand, and he needed to treat both hands. "Oh, right," she blurted. Her cheeks flushed even deeper as she wondered if he could feel how much she was sweating. Junwoo noticed her nervousness and gave a small, reassuring smile, promising to make sure it doesn't hurt. That promise, spoken so simply, made her heartbeat stumble. She turned her face away, too flustered to meet his eyes, then thanked him quietly. He took her hand again, his touch careful as he dabbed medicine over the second scrape. Their knees brushed, his legs longer, his frame larger, the difference between them impossible not to notice. She mentioned how good he was at basketball, adding that he looked so cool on the court. He brushed it off, saying he just got lucky as he fumbled with the cream container. Ajin laughed softly, saying he gave his all because he wanted to be MVP. But here he was patching her up instead. Her teasing made him freeze. His back straightened as if her words had struck something inside him. He stammered her name, then hesitated. The rest of the sentence got caught somewhere between his throat and his heart. Hearing her name fall from his lips so quietly, Ajin's breath hitched. Sparks were flying all over the room. Junwoo reached out and gently took her hand again. His gaze was steady now, no hesitation this time. He asked if she would go to the movies with him if he became MVP. Finally, our boy grew some balls. Ajin was confused at first. She pointed to herself, asking if he was referring to her. Her voice wavered. But why her? Not like she did anything for sports day. He smiled faintly, explaining that she had cheered for him more than anyone else, that hearing her voice had made him play better. And besides, she had gotten hurt because he didn't protect her. He suggested they go next Wednesday for the school anniversary. Ajin's lips curved into a small smile as she finally agreed. He nodded, satisfied, then glanced toward her knees, suggesting it was time to treat them. Just then, her mind drifted. That morning, she'd left the house in a hurry, unaware that she was wearing mismatched socks. Her hand hovered awkwardly over the first aid box as she said she would handle it herself. Junwoo reminded her that her hands were already injured, insisting she let him handle it. They both got into a struggle on who would handle it. Ajin felt he was going to make fun of her for life if he found out about her socks. In their squabble, someone had arrived at the doorway without them noticing. Inside the nurse's office, the tension grew until, in the middle of their bickering, Junwoo accidentally nudged her leg, making it sway. At that very moment, the door opened. Mr. Kim stepped inside with a smile on his face. He mentioned that he heard Ajin got hurt and was getting treated, but he couldn't have imagined what he saw next. Junwoo had lost his balance and fell directly onto Ajin. His hands caught him on either side of her, and their faces only inches apart. Mr. Kim froze at the doorway, completely lost for words. Ajin, on seeing him, quickly pushed Junwoo away from her in a fluster. Mr. Kim stepped in, cautioning them for messing around while the nurse was away. Ajin shoved Junwoo away, babbling a few words to save face, but there was no unseeing what Mr. Kim just witnessed. Mr. Kim placed a hand on the edge of the bed, leaning down to examine her hand. Ajin blinked in surprise, explaining that Junwoo had already treated her hands. Mr. Kim smiled faintly, patting Junwoo on the shoulder, thanking him for taking care of her. He was going to handle the rest. Junwoo's jaw tightened slightly as he wondered why he was getting involved. Junwoo straightened up to leave while Mr. Kim turned back to Ajin, asking her if she could place her legs on the bed. Ajin nodded quickly, saying she could manage. As Junwoo was leaving, Ajin asked how the game went, and Mr. Kim explained that their class won by a narrow margin. Junwoo stood by the door, unsure why his chest felt so tight. Mr. Kim asked in concern if she was okay. She explained that she was actually fine and it didn't hurt that much. Junwoo's mind drifted to Jungmin's earlier words about how Ajin and Mr. Kim seemed close. With everything that was happening, it bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Ajin noticed him lingering at the doorway and called out, saying, "She'll be done soon." She wanted to go back together. Junwoo hesitated, then said calmly that it was fine, suggesting they meet in class. Ajin thanked him for treating her hands, but Junwoo didn't wait to listen or respond. When he stepped into the hallway, he could still hear their voices inside. Mr. Kim wanted to know if Ajin had any plans for the school anniversary next week. Junwoo flinched as Mr. Kim continued. According to him, his university was having a festival and he wanted her to stop by. Junwoo glanced through the window, silently hoping she was going to say no. She asked excitedly if celebrities would be attending, and Mr. Kim mentioned some who would be attending. Her eyes widened in surprise because she had never seen a celebrity before. But despite how tempting it sounded, she asked if it could be rescheduled for another day. Mr. Kim smiled warmly, adding that the school anniversary is the last day of the festival, so rescheduling wouldn't be an option. Junwoo clenched his jaw, admitting that they must be really close. He wondered as he walked back to his class if he was even allowed to take a high schooler to such events. Worst of all, on the school anniversary. Back in the classroom, the homeroom teacher stood at the front, passing out ice cream to celebrate their sports day victory. Students laughed, thanking her and complimenting the ice cream. Junwoo sat quietly at his desk, regretting why he didn't wait for Ajin. He wondered what was taking so long. It was just her knee. Just then, the door slid open. Ajin entered, followed by Mr. Kim. He smiled, apologizing for showing up late, and asked if any ice cream was left for them. The teacher nodded and asked Ajin how she was doing, then asked her to take a seat. She was just about to announce the MVP. Ajin beamed with joy as she took her seat next to Junwoo. She was glad she didn't miss the announcement. As she got comfortable, he asked what took her so long, and she explained that she had tried to come quickly, but the conversation with Mr. Kim had taken longer than expected. The teacher's loud bang interrupted their conversion as she called for the class's attention. It was time to announce the winner. Everyone waited eagerly. The suspense hung in the air. The teacher finally announced that Junwoo was the MVP, and for a moment he sat frozen. Then, as the words sank in, cheers erupted all around. He walked up to the teacher, took his award, and bowed as she explained that he was chosen not just for his excellent performance, but for his kind attitude in helping an injured partner. He turned towards the class as it sunk in that he had actually won, but inside he didn't feel happy. Ajin would probably be going with Mr. Kim for the festival, so what was the point? Junwoo returned to his seat, wondering if all his effort was all in vain. If he didn't go to the movies with Ajin, the tickets were practically meaningless. The thoughts weighed heavy on him as he crumpled the tickets. But on a second thought, he decided to ask instead of making assumptions. That's probably the best decision our boy has ever made. When he glanced at her, she still had her ice cream in her mouth as she scribbled something on a piece of paper. I wonder how she didn't get a brain freeze till now. She slid the note across to him as his eyes widened in surprise, wondering what she was up to this time. The note read, "I'm so glad you got the MVP award. We're going to the movies together, right?" She stared at him as he read it, unsure of how he would react. When he was finally done, he glanced at her and was met by her ever-affectionate smile. And just like that, all the anger, worry, and jealousy melted away. Then with a small, relieved smile, he said, of course they'll be going together, and Junwoo being Junwoo, added that she should just eat her ice cream, else it was gonna melt. The school compound buzzed with chatter as Ajin and Chohui walked ahead of the other students. Chohui wore her usual mask of concern, asking if Ajin was feeling better, though her tone carried false warmth. Ajin replied that she had already been treated and was fine. Inside, Chohui remembered the moment she had deliberately thrown the ball at Ajin, only to see her plan crumble. Yet even in failure, her mind continued to spin with new calculations. As they walked, Cho-hui shifted into a friendly tone, inviting Ajin to hang out at her place as a way of apologizing. But Ajin stopped in her tracks. She remembered she already had plans that day. Scratching her cheek nervously, she explained that Junwoo had invited her to the movies. The words struck Cho-hui like a slap. Ajin continued, saying Junwoo only wanted to cheer her up after what had happened, that it wasn't a big deal. Cho-hui's eyes narrowed as her thoughts raced. Something didn't feel right. What exactly was going on between those two? Before she could say anything, Ajin added that she would have loved for Cho-hui to come along, but it would be awkward, and it seemed she would be too busy. Cho-hui forced a smile and told Ajin to go ahead and have fun. Ajin kept talking cheerfully about her class winning first place, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind her. The next morning at Junwoo's house, his bedside clock ticked slowly as it seemed time had suddenly stood still. He rolled restlessly on the bed, anxious for time to pass. He couldn't bear it anymore. He got out of bed, slipped into his slippers, dragging himself to the wardrobe. Swinging the door open, he frowned. Suddenly, none of his clothes looked good enough. After staring for a while, he sighed and headed downstairs. At the kitchen, the warm scent of breakfast filled the air. His mother was at the stove, humming softly as she cooked. Junwoo greeted her and pulled out a chair. She smiled over her shoulder, commenting that he was up earlier than usual and that breakfast would be ready soon. As she sent the table, Junwoo scratched the back of his neck and asked if she could buy him some new clothes. His voice was casual, but his tone carried a hint of nervousness. Meanwhile, across town, Ajin was facing a dilemma of her own. Standing in her room, she stared helplessly at the clothes spread across her bed. Every outfit she imagined herself wearing for the day seemed either too plain or too much. She stood there in her pajamas, debating silently which would look best. Then her phone rang. She reached for it, and it was the little devil Cho-hui. She answered the phone, and Cho-hui asked if she was busy. Ajin said she was getting ready for her movie date and asked what was wrong. Cho-hui claimed she had a photo shoot scheduled that day but couldn't make it because her period pain was unbearable. Ajin immediately expressed sympathy, asking if she was okay. Cho-hui, with a devious smile on her face, asked if Ajin could fill in for her and went on to say the shoot only required hand modeling for an accessory ad and that it couldn't be postponed. Her voice trembled just enough to sound convincing. Ajin hesitated. She had promised to meet Junwoo for the movie. Would it be possible to delay it? The thought made her uneasy. Cho-hui continued to plead, saying she could go see the movie some other time. Ajin's heart twisted in indecision. She clenched the phone tightly, torn between keeping her promise to Junwoo and helping her friend. Finally, after a long silence, she agreed. A slow, satisfied smile curled across Cho-hui's lips, the kind that hid malice beneath sweetness. Her plan had succeeded. I don't know about you guys, but this girl makes my blood boil. Meanwhile, at Jungmin's house, Junwoo had just arrived. Jungmin and another guy were gaming, so Junwoo settled in on the couch beside them. The friend commented on his outfit, prompting Jungmin to ask about his plans, but he said he still had time before leaving. Every few minutes, he glanced at his phone, checking for messages. Nothing yet. Earlier that morning, he had gone shopping with his mother for new clothes. He could still remember her pointing to a shirt and saying it would suit him. While shopping, he received a text. At first, he thought it might be Jungmin texting, but then he remembered Jungmin already knew he had plans. Pulling out his phone, he saw it was actually from Ajin. She asked if they could push their movie date because she had to help Cho-hui. Junwoo placed his hand on his chin, a troubled frown crossing his face. He had a gut feeling Cho-hui couldn't be trusted. Still, he made sure to ask for Ajin's address, just in case something went wrong. Jungmin slid the game controller toward him, asking if he wanted to play, but Junwoo waved him off, declining. Jungmin sighed, remarking that Junwoo's attention was obviously somewhere else. His eyes hadn't left his phone once. Junwoo sat there quietly, clutching his phone, an uneasy feeling settling deep in his chest. He hoped that Ajin was okay. Meanwhile, across town, Ajin finally arrived at the location for the shoot, double-checking the address on her phone as she wondered if she was in the right place. She knocked on the door, asking if this was where the shoot was being held. A man inside opened the door slightly and gestured for her to come in. As soon as she stepped inside, the door closed behind her. She looked around. The room was empty. No stylists, no makeup artists, no one except the man and a setup of bright lights, cameras, and photography equipment. Ajin followed hesitantly, asking where the rest of the staff were. The man told her he didn't need any staff for this shoot. Then he pointed toward a rack in the corner and told her she could change into the clothes hanging there. When Ajin turned to look, the garments weren't clothes. They were practically underwear. Back at Youngmin's house, Junwoo was still staring at his phone. Something in his chest twisted tighter by the minute. He clenched jaw. He couldn't take it anymore. Standing abruptly, he called out to Youngmin, who was too absorbed in his game to notice. Youngmin grumbled in annoyance, but Junwoo insisted that they talk outside. Once they stepped into the open air, Junwoo explained that Ajin hadn't been answering his calls. Youngmin brushed it off, asking how he was supposed to know why. But Junwoo's voice grew tense. He mentioned that Ajin had gone to help Chohui with a modeling favor, and that he hadn't heard from her since. That got Youngmin's attention. His expression shifted from playful to serious. Junwoo asked if he could find out what Chohui was doing at that moment. Youngmin scratched his head, uneasy, saying it might be weird to ask out of nowhere. Junwoo apologized, saying he had no one else to turn to. After a moment's thought, Youngmin came up with an idea. Since he still followed Chohui on social media, he could check if she had posted anything that morning. Junwoo grabbed his arm in urgency, thanking him and telling him to check immediately. Before Youngmin could open his phone, Junwoo's device began to ring. It was Ajin. Relief and dread struck at once as he answered quickly. Junwoo froze, his heart racing as he listened. Ajin's words were shaky, almost breaking apart. She was calling from the changing room. She said she needed help. Junwoo asked her to stay calm and explain what was going on. She cried, trembling with fear as she tried to explain. She said she had come for the accessory shoot, but when she arrived, they had given her indecent clothing to wear. Junwoo asked where she was, trying to keep his voice steady even as panic clawed at him. Ajin wiped her tears, whispering that she was trapped in the changing room after the man forced her inside. Junwoo's words were calm but reassuring. He told her he would save her. He would call the cops and head over immediately. Youngmin, still standing beside him, watched in confusion. He could only hear Junwoo's side of the conversation. Junwoo assured her that it was daytime. The man wouldn't be able to do anything to her. Then asked her not to worry and just wait for him. When Junwoo ended the call, Ajin bent forward, burying her face between her knees, her body trembling uncontrollably. She sniffled through quiet sobs, realizing how frightened she truly was that she didn't think to call the police. She remembered how he grabbed her hands roughly and shoved her into the changing room when she protested against wearing the outfit he gave her. She could still recall the harsh tone in his voice when he ordered her to get in. He seemed like he was going to hit her. She hugged her knees, praying Junwoo would arrive fast. Back at Youngmin's place, Youngmin was still confused. He asked Junwoo why he was calling the cops. Junwoo explained that Ajin was in danger as he dialed emergency services. When the police answered, he reported that a minor had been locked inside a room during a photo shoot and that someone was trying to take photos of her without consent. Youngmin's face went pale on hearing this. Junwoo gave the police the address immediately and thanked them while Youngmin stood behind him, checking Chohui's social media to see what he could find. As soon as the call ended, Junwoo began moving toward the door, but Youngmin stopped him just in time. He showed Junwoo his phone. He had found something. Chohui was out at a cafe, and it was clear she wasn't at any photo shoot. Meanwhile, at the villa, Ajin's nightmare continued. The man outside the changing room began banging on the door with increasing force. His voice thundered through the room, accusing her of wasting time. Inside, Ajin trembled, frozen in place as her heart pounded. Summoning every bit of courage she had left, she finally opened the door. The man's glare met her instantly, demanding to know why she hadn't changed yet. Ajin's hands shook as she stretched the outfit toward him and said she wouldn't wear it. He stepped closer, his presence suffocating, demanding to know what she thought she had agreed to when she signed the contract for the shoot. Ajin tossed the clothes to him, saying that she hadn't signed any contract, so whatever agreement he thinks they had was void. The man's hand tightened around the clothes as he called her rude. Ajin took a step back, clutching her bag against her chest like a shield. Fear surged through her body as she counted her backward steps carefully. Then, in one desperate motion, she saw a narrow opening and ran. The man shouted after her to come back, but she was determined to get out of there. Her relief was short-lived. Another man stepped out from a side hallway, blocking her escape. He grabbed her wrists roughly, yelling at the first man for almost letting her slip away. The two of them began shouting at each other, arguing over whose fault it was. The first man barked angrily that if she refused to change, the other man asked him to make her. Ajin's stomach twisted in horror. Before either could act, a sharp pounding came from the door. Everyone in the room froze. A voice from outside announced itself. It was the police. Ajin's heart leapt in disbelief and hope at once, but before she could react, the man with tattooed hands lunged forward and clamped his palm over her mouth. She tried to scream, but the sound came out muffled. He dragged her into a dark room, whispering threats for her to stay quiet. Her fingers clawed at his arm, struggling to pry his hand away, but he was too strong. The door creaked open slowly as the other man stepped out to meet the officers. A fake smile spread across his face as he asked how he could help. The police explained the report they had received, that someone was being held against their will inside. Feigning innocence, the man began arguing, insisting that no such thing had happened. He said it was a misunderstanding, that this was simply a studio for couple photo shoots. Ajin heard everything from inside but was completely helpless. Her legs kicked weakly as the tattooed man lifted her off the ground, whispering harshly for her to be quiet. Outside, the other man tried convincing the police, saying they would never keep a minor there, that it was a studio for couple photo shoots. The officers hesitated for a moment, their suspicion wavering. But then they heard a voice behind them, one filled with breathless urgency. It was Junwoo. He told them firmly that the girl was inside and that he was the one who had made the report. To prove it, he pulled out his phone and began dialing her number, praying it would ring. From inside, Ajin's phone started ringing from her pocket. The man holding her cursed out instantly, his face draining of color. The police turned toward the sound. That was all the confirmation they needed. Junwoo pushed past them without hesitation, bursting into the room and calling Ajin's name. The tattooed man barely had time to react before Ajin bit down hard on his hand. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she kicked his leg with all her strength. He yelped, releasing her immediately. Across the room, Junwoo spotted her. Ajin sprinted towards him, throwing herself into his arms. Tears poured down her face as she buried herself in his chest, realizing what could have happened if he hadn't come. He held her as if afraid to let go, his eyes lowering to her shaking shoulders. The officers ordered the two suspects to follow to the station. One of them turned to Junwoo, instructing him to take his friend home and assuring him they would contact him after the investigation. Ajin sniffled quietly, still crying as Junwoo thanked the officers. When it was finally over, he called her name gently. She looked up, her eyes swollen, wiping at her tears. He told her it was time to go home. By the time they reached her house, the sun was already setting, bathing the street in pale evening light. Standing at her doorstep, Ajin turned to him, thanked him for everything he had done, then apologized for ruining the day, for missing their movie because of her. Junwoo turned toward her and told her not to apologize. None of what had happened was her fault. Ajin's eyes lowered. She murmured a quiet thanks just as her phone chimed with a new message. She glanced down at the screen. It was from her mom. The restaurant was packed, so her and Ajin's dad would be home late. She wanted Ajin to have a good dinner. He guessed it might be her mother. Ajin smiled lightly and nodded, saying it was. She was just letting her know they'll be late. She thanked him again, her voice warm but tired, saying she could handle things from there and that he should head home safely. Junwoo hesitated, watching her quietly. He wanted to say something. There was so much he wanted to say, but the words wouldn't come. He finally turned away, taking slow, deliberate steps. Each one felt heavy, as though he was leaving something behind. Then he suddenly turned back and grabbed her hand. Ajin turned back in surprise, wondering what was wrong. Junwoo's voice came low and hesitant, his courage wrapped in restraint. He asked if he could stay with her for a while. And that's where we'll pause for today. I hope you enjoyed the story so far. If you're eager to find out what happens next, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Beneath the Story, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. You can also leave a super thanks to help support the channel and keep these stories coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.